You guys are gonna see my top of my head a lot because I gotta look down and then look up again. So that's
Good thing you
great.
fixed your hair today, huh?
I was just thinking that. I'm like, oh, now I'm looking at all these spots going, is this the lighting in here? Or do I actually
It's the lighting.
have something
It's the
going on?
lighting.
Like, I've never seen that on my face before. Yeah, anyway. Good times. Well, I was just seeing if anybody else would join us. So how about for now, let's start with have a shout out. Anybody want to share where they're at, kind of like what you guys have been, I guess Wiz, we can start with you since on my screen, you are on the one side. Like what are your daily kind of report out? What do you got for us?
I made 2 phone calls. No one answered the phone. I left messages, and I texted 2 people. One answered me saying she's at work, so she can't answer me. She can't talk either. So, but that's it for today.
Okay, good. We'll just move right across the screen here. For me, that's Amy.
Today has been pretty quiet, but I did sign all 3 of my kids up for softball and baseball, so I'm hoping to make some contacts there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that can be good.
Yeah.
All right, we got
Pretty quiet though.
when you're done laughing or coughing, I'll just think you were laughing at me.
I was yawning, no offense. I haven't done anything today as far as contacts. I've been working all day, so went from work to this. So
That's okay. Hopefully it was a good day at work.
yeah, I'm not done. Gotta keep going after this.
Keep it on,
Business
yeah.
is good.
All right, well, that's good. Jason, what do you got for us?
I have gotten through about 4 of my daily 10 emails, so got 6 more to do after this.
Good. What's your plan for making that happen?
Oh, I have a list. I'm just going down there. I just haven't had time to get the full 10 in today. I just did 4 before class, and I'll do 6 afterwards.
Perfect.
Yep.
Is there anything that might get in the way of that happening for you, for yourself?
Work and got a whole bunch of projects. We're building a little ADU in the backyard, so it's kind of like a construction zone around here, and so.
All right, I can totally see how that could get in the way. So what are you going to do to overcome those challenges and try to make sure it happens for you today?
I just put aside a half hour each day to get 10 emails in.
Good.
Yep.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and that's a great strategy for all of us to remember is blocking out certain time.
Yeah.
Is really it. I mean, you're not alone in that. It's all of us. We all have distractions in life and just other work, too. So.
Sure.
Good. Ethan, what do you got?
Yeah, hey, I've been looking at houses for my parents because they are actually just got interested in selling their house. I sent them 2 today, and they actually really like them. So they're now even more convinced than ever to do it. And then my sister is also thinking about trying to get a duplex. So trying to put an eye out on that as well.
Right on. Good. That's good. And hit the ground running. As we've taught, you guys have probably heard and throughout the I guess you could say the classes, the system, we do hope maybe that sometimes we have friends or family or whatever that jump in and help us kind of get our career started. But, that's not always the case for everybody. So definitely a good opportunity you have to work with her and get some experience and get going. And at the same time, leverage that and take full advantage in a good way of the opportunity and the exposure you're getting, and use that to kind of springboard yourself into the public eye and to the other people around you, just to show that you're out making it happen.
Right.
It's a good, and working with family can be, sometimes it's more stressful, honestly, and not worth it. But when it's not, you can springboard and leverage your confidence, your sense of you're comfortable in what you're doing because your family cares about you, and so they're supporting you, and you don't feel like you're on edge always. So definitely utilize that. See if you can slingshot, as they talk about, slingshot that energy back around and get really just make stuff happen. Definitely.
Right.
Good. I barely finished chewing my lunch before I turned the camera on. So it's like one meeting to the next. Well, as you guys know, today is all about negotiating, right? Is it the class you're in? Is that the class I'm supposed to be teaching? Hopefully that's the one. Let's do this. And I appreciate you guys' patience. As I said, I'm trying out this different system. I'm used to teaching. I've gotten into a rhythm of teaching on and just doing meetings and stuff on my multiple monitors, either in my office here or mine at home. And so I thought I'd try this out a little different. So I'm out of my normal rhythm of, where slides are and where things are on my screen. So anyway, I appreciate I'm just going to work right off of my paper notes because that makes it easier for now. And then, we'll go from there. We'll make it as good as we can. It's all about the content really, right? So you don't really care about watching me do any of this stuff, right? So, what would you say? Well, I guess I was just thinking about it actually before we started the class. As some of you have been in it a little while here, what would any of you say could be the hardest thing so far in what you're doing and trying to get up and rolling as a realtor? Just as a interesting or fun aside, what has been the hardest thing for you so far? Anybody want to share one or two things that has really been our toughest struggle so far?
Yeah, I
I
don't
know
think it's
it's me, it's just making contacts.
Okay.
yeah, I don't think it's
Yeah.
difficult. It's just getting your name out there, and I imagine it'll be like a snowball effect. You get your name out there for a while, it just takes time to get your name out there, and then eventually things will start pouring in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that mindset. What we do know is that it just takes being in front of people. It's about they refer to it as a contact sport, right? You cannot be in business if you're not connecting with people either in person, on the phone, on the text, some way, right? Virtually, in whatever you're doing, you have to be connecting in some way, right? It is rare that, and even in some of the best agents that have been in the business in a while and have a good reputation, it is still rare that they would have just business calling them, that the phone would just ring. Usually they're doing something that's causing that, or they're still engaging in some sort of activity that is resulting in that, if that's what's happening for them. So in what we do know is it is a noisy world. There are a lot of realtors right now. There's a record number of realtors in the country. So, just showing up as a realtor is probably not going to be enough. And I don't want to discourage somebody in that sense. I more want to say, it's important to realize that we need to do that, and we need to show up first of all. And if we don't show up, we're what they call a secret agent, right? Nobody knows we're in business. So kind of pushing past that, out of our comfort zone, to find ways to show up naturally and in people's lives, and then at that point, definitely building on that momentum of here's what we are, here's what we do, and building the trust and the reputation with the people and even those you don't. So anyway, yeah. Anybody else want to share what they're struggling with the most?
The
Jamie, you
first
said,
transaction, I guess for me, is the first transaction. I feel like it has to be that breakthrough, what I have to
Sure.
do, just that one transaction first. That way, that way I can put it out there, look, I did it, and then kind of go from there. I feel like the first one is it has to be that breakthrough.
do you find that you have a sense of well, I'll just use the word, a fear of ending up in that transaction, not knowing what you need to do, or
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the process of it, the process of the transaction. I really want to know how to do it. So I feel like once I've done that, maybe I'll feel more confidence. But right now, since I don't have any transaction yet, I feel like I'm still in the limbo.
Sure. Amy, you've kind of gotten into it. You've waded into that a little bit. Do you feel any more confident now that you have, or is it you still feel some of the same feelings?
So much better. So just having that experience of writing the offer and having some conversations, and even though we're not using zip forms anymore and we're doing it differently, which yesterday's class was great, just having the experience of going through it and seeing it all, nothing looks foreign. So
Yeah.
that really helped.
That's great. Just for fun, I'm still using zip forms. I went ahead and paid for it.
Did you?
I decided I'm an old dog and I don't need to learn new tricks. So
Is it easier though?
I've been using it forever is the thing.
Oh, so you already get used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I'm in the middle of transactions now and I'm like, I can't go learn a whole nother system. It's just like, I don't have time. Plus what I have is working. I mean, I have a DocuSign account. I have zip forms. I can literally just go in and do what I need to do. And if it was a major time saver, like I was using an antiquated system and I just had to get off of it, then yeah, I would learn it. But from everything I'm learning from people, I think it's tomato and tomato. I mean, it's two different versions that are trying to perform the similar task. And there's really not a major benefit to either in terms of efficiency or, whatever. So
I like zip forms much better.
yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you're used to. So one of my TCs I used for years even though I didn't use it in our office, we, at that time, KWRP was still stuck on, what the heck was that old system?
SkySlope.
No, that's just it. She loved SkySlope because other offices were using that, but our old KW office was using another older system that, anyway. And then we were individually adding, zip forms. But anyway, she got me all fired up to use SkySlope, and then realized that we had to pay for it because we weren't using it as an office. So yeah, whatever. Anyway, I just don't know anything about it. So I'm going with what I know, right? So anyway, Wiz, yeah, it's a good it's a real concern, I guess, or fear that a lot of us have felt. And it's also something, just so you know, and for the rest of you know, I mean, I'm here for you guys. So I hope that you can, I tell you that, but I hope you, I think Amy, you could probably speak to it because I know I've helped you, but I think that
Yes.
that part of it is really not as big a hurdle as you mentally feel like it is. I think I can literally just sit down with you like we did at Amy. We just sat down at a coffee shop and went through it all real quick and just crank it out, like talk through it, fill it out, boom, it's done. And then you're like, oh, that's it. Okay. It's the harder thing is truly the negotiating part, how do you structure your deal to be a winning deal? How do you look at all the things because the paperwork starts to become the same every time. And then you just start tweaking the things that you need to tweak. So Wiz, we'll definitely, if you want, we can even mock up some offers just for fun, or write. If you have anybody that you think is going to write an offer on something, we can do it and just write a lowball offer that won't get accepted, but we'll just do it for practice. I'm happy to do that too, So, and you can actually go through the process of contacting the other agent and, submitting it and all that too, if you want. So, and just write something that they won't accept, just for practice. Whatever you want to do, I'm happy to help. So, all right, so let's talk about this. As you guys know, their negotiations are a part of our lives. We all are engaging in negotiation in many areas of our life, whether we realize it or not. Anybody that has had kids is negotiating with their kids on a regular basis, whether you want to call it that or not. It's what you're doing. We really are. We are just engaging in negotiations constantly. So truly, that in terms of real estate, it's an opportunity to practice really what we are doing in a lot of areas of our life and work towards helping we're here to guide our clients in this process, right? We're not the heroes. You probably hear me this is kind of a thing I'm trying to make, how am I say it's a little bit of a soapbox I've been getting on lately about reminding us as agents, not you guys. I'm talking us as an industry. Hey, we're not the hero in this whole story. We are the guide. We're here to guide people through the process, help them to reach their goals, to get from where they are to where they want to be. Yeah. So what tools we have, one of the tools we have is being a good negotiator. And so we got to work on that. And something to remember on the front end of this whole class, I'll probably mention it again, but I want to mention this on the front end. Negotiations, something to keep in mind is this process inherently is an opt-in process. This process is a willing buyer and a willing seller coming together to try to make this deal work. We're not in like civil court, or like we're not somebody suing somebody here. We have two willing parties that just want this deal to work, right? We're just trying to come together. So, and I mention that because you guys may all probably sitting here think, oh yeah, obviously. But I'll tell you, after 20 years in this business, there's a lot of agents that just whether it's their ego or I don't know what, they don't come at it from that standpoint unless maybe somebody reminds them that you know, they need to be, because they come at it from, we got to win, you know, damn it, we're going to take this, you know, what's up with this person, and they get all kind of, they forget that we have a willing buyer and a willing seller, neither of which have to be there. You know, this person doesn't have to sell their house unless they're in a, you know, in a bind financially, but even then they have options. They can just walk away, right? So the reason I mention that is, as you're kind of constructing what does negotiation look like, keep that in mind, that we're really we're guiding our clients to a successful ending, and we are working with a willing buyer and a willing seller. You know, this isn't people's court here. You know, so having said all that, I'm just going to look at, actually, you know what, I'd be really awesome as an instructor if I pulled up the let me just look up the PowerPoint here, because that would be really nifty. Because let me see here. Let's see if I can, I'm gonna look here. This might be different. Oh, here we go. Only host. Okay. I might have to change out of this screen if I host or if I share screen. So let me see here. Okay, I think I could do it. I apologize for the, see what happens here. Well, what screen do you see? Which screen do you see? Do you see the Zoom, like
Ignite, yeah.
You see Ignite?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's good. Did I just make it larger for you?
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Do you see me changing slides?
Yes.
Okay. Well, look at that. It changed screens on me, so that's why I'm asking. Okay. We went through our lead generation stuff. So one of the things, these videos in here are, do you guys ever get those to work? Does anybody ever make those work for you guys? Do you ever see them work?
Not
Barely.
yet.
I think once, maybe.
Oh yeah, you're right. Once. Yeah, there's someone did it once.
Yeah,
When I
it's
say
funny.
first one.
The way that they have this thing set up, it just doesn't, anyway, yeah, it doesn't. I've taught before in person where I had it working and it would just, you click on it and it would run through it. But for some reason, I don't know. I don't know if it's just a different slide deck that I'm getting for the class that doesn't have that. Whatever, that's okay. So what are the first things? Well, I mean, we just talked about, let's put it here. Your ability to negotiate will directly influence your rate. The contract's closed. Let's do this. Okay. Now what do you see? What do you guys
Get
see
your
now?
head in the game and negotiation.
Oh, good. So you see not my screen, but or you see the other screen. That's awesome. Not so much. How about that?
That's page 10 to pages
Just
10 and 11.
negotiation. So it's
Yeah.
just negotiation. Perfect. Okay. Good. I'm working on it here. So yeah, really talk about, you know, there's if you've all heard me before, you've heard me talk about part of succeeding in this, and we can, since we're talking about this, the art of negotiation, a big part of succeeding is having expectations clearly communicated, right? You guys have all probably heard me talk about that before. Setting expectations, getting everybody in on what's going on or what could go on is a key part to negotiation. So do you guys, who are the parties that you think in a transaction? Why don't you guys throw out a few? Who are the people that you figure that you'll be negotiating with during in the course of being a realtor in a transaction, let's say, or whatever? Who are you negotiating with?
Cooperating agent
Yeah.
and the buyer and seller.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. You kind of cover all of them there, but yeah. So your client is one of them. A lot of times people don't realize that you're actually negotiating with your own client. You're helping to bring them along, and it's a little different because again, we're not in an adversarial negotiation. We're in a setting expectations and helping them to kind of come to understand. And sometimes it's helping. It's really, I don't think of it as negotiation, but it actually is, because negotiation is just trying to move something along often, right? So when you think about negotiation, you want to keep in mind that it isn't just you trying to negotiate with the other agent or the seller or some other, party. It could be like vendors, it could be, that you're trying to work out a repair that's, you could be negotiating with them. But really the key thing to remember is it's not only your own client, or not only the other parties, but your own client. That's one of the things that you want to keep in mind, because your goal here is, as I said, is to set expectations, and sometimes you just have to bring them along on that. So you have to talk them through it. You have to help them, to ask them questions and guide them through it. And that's the art of negotiating. Sometimes it's just asking somebody questions and moving them along. So during the time you put in the offer is obviously the first sort of, there could be, obviously, when you're setting up, working with your buyer in the very beginning, you're going to talk with them, set expectations. We've already talked about that, but just helping them mentally prepare for the process they're going to embark on. And sometimes that is, you have to do a little negotiating with them too on that, and help them see the benefit of maybe going out and driving through the neighborhood first without you there, so that when you show up to meet them at the house, they don't just go, oh yeah, we just got here, we don't like the neighborhood, let's move on. And you're like, well, you could have done that without me here. So I don't, so to help your process go well, doing that ahead of time really helps. But if we focus on the negotiating within the transaction part, you have the beginning of it, which is of course the part where you are really trying to come into agreement, where you're trying to bring both parties into agreement. You're thinking about, what does the other side need? What do we have to offer? What tools do we have as a buyer? If you're on the buyer side, let's say, if you're on the seller side, it's like, okay, what is my seller? What are the goals here? What's my seller trying to do? How can I help? How can I consider, and then asking the buyer questions, or listening to what questions they ask you, and try to figure out the two parties, right, and bring them into agreement on this. Because and I'll say this many times, remember, we have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and our job is to guide them to a happy conclusion, right? So once we get through and we get an accepted offer, then the next kind of major phase, you might say, of negotiation that happens is the contract to close. And so once you're under contract, it isn't just a matter of sitting back and putting your feet up on the desk and saying, woohoo, we did it. That's really where the good agents shine. That's where the rubber meets the road. And in a lot of agents think, okay, I got the deal, let's move on. The truth is, if you look at a lot of agents, and especially agents who don't take the time to set expectations with their clients and really guide their clients in that process. And if you look at those kind of agents, their deals written to fall through rate, their deals written to deals closed is not nearly as high, because they have deals fall through. They have deals that don't, they fail, we call them sale fails. The sale fails to close. So you look at people's sale fail rate, and it can be, to me, it's kind of, it's alarming sometimes. I've been around teams or coaching people, and I'm just like, I've been even in offices with teams like next door or wherever, and I'm listening to some of these agents, and they're just like, write the offer quick. Yeah, let's get this buyer in. Let's just write it up quick. And I'm like, your buyer's never going to close on that. Like, you haven't prepared them. They're, whatever. And then when all this stuff comes to a head in the middle of these inspection issues and whatever, they're just going to bail. They're not committed. So, you got to work with and set expectations, but that phase of contract to close is where you're really going to have an opportunity to shine, where you're going to problem solve. And problem solving is negotiating. It's what you're doing. You're trying to figure out a way to solve these two parties and bring them together. You might get lucky, and sometimes, and it's like, and in this market, honestly, if you've prepared your buyers well, frankly, they're probably just going to close, because they know that if they want the house, they close. If they don't, they don't. That's how it is. In other markets, it is more important. Well, it's important now, but it's even more critical to learn this skill, because ultimately what you're going to have in other markets is a list of issues and things that you have to kind of tug a war back and forth and find where that not even a middle ground, but find where that place is that both parties are willing to come together to agree. Those are kind of those are kind of it, right? You're at the point now where you, hang on a second. You are trying to get the deal to close, and I can't get down here to let Thornton in, unfortunately. Let's see. Well, or not. I think I hacked that one. So what we're trying to, obviously work through is how do we, and there is what we call win-win. You guys have heard that, right? Heard the whole win-win. When you think of, so this is maybe for Jamie, I know you're a little more versed in some of this, but when you think of win-win, and you insert yourself on one side of that, tell me what you think that means to the other party. When you think of a win-win, what is that? You kind of describe it, but kind of describe it from the standpoint that you're a part of that. Somebody, anybody. Bueller?
I would
Everybody has
probably, go ahead, Amy.
Sorry. So each party's happy with the negotiation. They got, their side of the deal is what they were looking for.
Yeah, I mean, that can be it. Do you feel, does that mean, well, let me just ask you guys, like, when you think about it that way, if you're in it, does that mean you got all you wanted out of the deal necessarily? I mean,
No, I think you negotiate to a point where everybody's happy. Well, at least the clients anyways. You're doing everything for them anyways, but.
yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning that, Jamie, because that, you just mentioned something there, at least the clients.
Yeah.
For those of us who've been around a little while, we could probably speak to the egos, right, of agents, and how often, and for those of us that haven't, I just want to bring this up because you'll find that there are going to be very often times where it's the agent and their ego and their desire to win that is in the way of the deal, that is causing the challenge that you are facing. It is not that their client, the buyer or the seller, is the issue. It's actually the agent themselves, whether it's them wanting to look good in front of their client, or them personally, you'll get stuff like, oh, they're never going to sign that, or oh, they're, wow, this is just unacceptable, or oh, whatever it is, even maybe something not quite as obvious as that. But you just have to, I just wanted to put that in your head so you remember that sometimes it isn't the client. Sometimes I get, when you're talking to your client, like, I can't believe that seller won't give on this. And I go, well, it may not be the seller. It may be their agent. It may be their agent's working so hard to prove to their seller that they're doing a good job, that they're actually the ones that are causing the problem. Maybe their sellers just, and I've been around long enough that I've witnessed that happening, and like very even clearly to the point where we've interacted with the seller, and the seller is like, no, I'm totally fine with it. I'm like, okay, so it's your agent that's the one putting up the fight here. And that's challenging. It can be very frustrating, especially when you figure that out. And yet it is part of what we run into. We're in an ego-driven business. So when you're negotiating, you have to remember that you're talking to potentially somebody in this kind of environment, whether it is the client or the seller or the agent or a combination of both. Sometimes high ego agents work with high ego clients. Just keep that in mind too, because they have a rapport in that way. So sometimes it's merely a matter of understanding that and how you approach it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the logical approach will work, or it doesn't mean that the non-logical approach won't work. It just means that I just want you to kind of keep that in mind, that the agent is potentially one of the aspects of that you're negotiating with or against, even potentially. So when we think about it, let's look at, I'm going to jump to page 10, right? Well, actually, what do they have on page 11? That's the video here. Well, page 10 is what I was basically hitting on there. Oh, look at that. It even says, you may not realize it, but you're almost always negotiating. Oh, I'll be darned. Look at that. It's even in the manual. Page 10. The win-win, though, on that note, by the way, the reason I brought that up is I've been around and I've taught that and had experienced people think, or I should say, I've had experienced people disagree with win-win because they believe that they have the sense that there has to be, like, in order to win, somebody else has to lose. And we talk about win-win as one of our aspects of Keller Williams, because if you really understand it truly, it doesn't mean you met in the middle. It doesn't mean that either party got everything they wanted, right? But it does mean that either party came to a point where they were, that was satisfactory to make whatever you're working on work out, like come together. And sometimes a win-win is the other person gave up everything, yet the goal for them was to sell the house, right? So that still can be a win-win, right? Anyway, just as a kind of a note, when you think about win-win, it doesn't mean that you're winning everything or losing everything. It just means that you find a place where everybody's, coming together. So as I mentioned, page 10 here, when it says, negotiation, bargaining, give and take, we've kind of talked this through, but I think it's a good quote, process between two or more parties, each with its own aims, needs, and viewpoints, seeking to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or resolve a conflict. It's like all that we've been talking about. So, and as we look at here, and the video is kind of fun. I think I've seen this one before. It's just an interesting reminder of all the different aspects of who we work with and how we are negotiating these things. So on page 12, so you guys have the manuals, right? On page 12, I want you guys to take a quick look at that. And what do you guys think about? So tell me what you think. When you look at those few there, what is that, 6 of them? Tell me, each of you guys throw out something that some thoughts you have about just any one of those. Just pick one and say, well, this is like I've experienced this, or my thoughts around, or just give me your take on why that's important. Or I'll assign them if that's easier. All right. You guys ready? Amy.
Yes.
Why is continually refer back to motivation important in negotiating?
So if a client gets stuck on one point of negotiation, and so, the deal's not going to go anywhere, reminding them why they're doing it, to understand why it's important to look at each point of negotiation and how it's going to get them to where they want to be.
Yeah, I think you said it very well. Like if let's say you're buying a house for yourself, for example, and the seller ultimately wants to sell it for more than what you're willing to pay, if you're negotiating with them at some point, your motivation, what you're willing to do. And at some point you say, that's beyond our motivation. It's beyond what we are willing or able to do. Right.
Exactly.
Wiz, how about the listen more than talk? Tell me about that.
Well, you need to find out what their want is, or I guess what they really need, what their dream house is. So you listen more, so that way they can tell you exactly what they want or what they need.
Yeah. How can we? I mean, that's almost seems like a duh sort of thing. And yet, how often do we just talk? Right. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'll just admit, just talk. Right. So are we able to understand where the other party is coming from if we just keep talking? Obviously not, right? We have to ask questions and then listen. What do they say? We were given one mouth and 2 ears, use them in proportion, right? So if we could always remember, one of the best, I mean, these are all really good tips, but certainly one of the best tips in negotiation is asking questions and listening. If you listen well, you'll hear what's really going on inside and hear their motivation, hear what's really happening with them. Thornton, don't be attached to the outcome. What's the issue with that? Tell me, or not the issue, but why is that important in negotiation?
Shoot, you caught me off guard here.
Oh, that was my intention.
I know, and I know it was. Repeat that again.
So on page 12, negotiating tips, don't be attached to the outcome. Why is that important in negotiation?
So you don't want to let yourself or the clients down, I guess. Is that what you're looking for?
I don't know. What do you guys think? Anyone?
I think it's
Yeah, jump in.
I think it's more like, don't let your ego get involved. Allow it to be flexible. Don't be, have your mind set on one specific outcome of it. Be flexible and open to negotiations. And if it doesn't, if it doesn't go through, then either keep trying or move on.
Yeah. Yeah, that mindset is a huge part of that. And then, connected to that directly is outcome, like you said. So when you have an outcome, it says, don't get attached to the outcome. One of the challenges we run into in negotiating is if we have a certain outcome that we have, like, we're just committed to in our hearts, even really more than our mind, than our, logically, right? But if we're committed emotionally to a certain outcome, and that outcome just isn't possible, or there's not a way to connect the dots to make that work, it derails, like, even like just as a normal human condition, it derails us emotionally. And then we're not able to really to be as effective in our negotiating and working with the clients on it, because now we're like, but I didn't get this, but I did. And even if you're not consciously doing that, we as people are subconsciously doing that, and the more we can get out of our own heads on being attached to a specific outcome. And in our case, when this is talking about, specific outcome, really, this is really kind of what we're talking about. If we get back into the mindset of, we are here to guide a willing buyer and a willing seller. And if the outcome is, if the ideal outcome is that this party buys it from this party and they both really want that to work, then the specific outcomes within that are less important, right? Does that make sense? Like the bigger picture is more important,
Yeah, don't let your own expectations affect your flexibility to negotiate.
Yeah, well said. That's a really good way to say it. So I'm going to tag on, remember your goal, assigned contract. I'm going to tag that on because that's within that, right? That's when you talk about your goal, I would probably, you guys know me by now, I would rephrase that a little bit and say our goal as realtors guiding our clients through this is, guiding our clients in that process. It isn't just a signed contract, right? It's not just a goal. The goal is getting a signed contract if that's what's right for our client, if that is the outcome that makes the most sense and is the best outcome for our clients, right? So assuming that's the goal, then yeah, we're working towards that. Something that's talked about here, control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. If you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you are reducing their leverage in negotiation. So do you guys remember what I said before and what I've said in other classes? Building rapport, right? Building rapport with your clients, talking to them through stuff. Well, you're going to learn things about them. Building rapport with the other agent. Once you build rapport, they let their guard down typically, and you have a more human to human conversation, and you're able to talk more freely about stuff. Well, in the art of negotiations, what you're trying to do is get everybody to a comfortable place where they start sharing freely. So what it says here is it's talking about, if you're trying to negotiate, there are times when it does make sense to communicate openly because that's actually bringing everybody together, right? That's creating a win-win. And there are other times when you can sometimes inadvertently start sharing more information that give the other party, if we're just stating it in these terms, give the other party a leg up on you. Like, I'm trying to couch how I say this because I'm a fan of making it win-win, but let's be realistic. We are advocating for our client, right? So we are advocating for them and trying to do our best to get the house for the least amount. If we're on the buy side or selling, it's not always the most money, but basically creating the best situation, right? And we all agree on that. So with that in mind, I'll couch, if you keep that kind of general positive kind of framework in mind, yeah, we are negotiating, right? So if we can be mindful of how we share and what we share, it will give us more, basically not give the other party as much leverage as they can, and then vice versa, get as much information as you can out of the other party, and you'll be able to, and it isn't always a negative thing. It's just like you would as a buyer's agent, you want to get as much information as you can out of the listing agent because it helps you put together an offer that is acceptable, right? I mean, that's what you want and what you need to do. Don't just read the RMLS and then write up an offer and send it over. That's just really poor. Not only do you have no negotiation skills going on, but that's a really poor strategy. So, but it's interesting because you read some of these tips and you read it from, well, it depends on which side you're on, right? But anyway, be professional. This is the last one. I won't even ask you guys because that's rhetorical. If we come out guns a-blazing, if we calling people names, if we're like swearing at them, is that going to help you guys really? No, it's not. So Has that happened to me? Have I been yelled at by another agent? Yes. Did that help our relationship? No. You know, that's not a good strategy. And you guys all know that. I don't have to remind you yet. It's important that and it's important because when we talk about getting attached to the outcome emotionally for us, that's where your emotions start getting the better of you. That's where you will see another agent, you know, like maybe it's them, maybe it's their client, maybe their client just ripped them a new one and you don't know where they're coming from, you know, but just be mindful that when you're operating and negotiating out of emotion, you're already on the losing end of it. All right. So be professional. We'll jump into some, you know, on page 13 of your manual. We'll talk about common points of negotiation here. This is, I mean, some of these are really kind of obvious. Yet I don't want to pretend that all of you guys, I mean, you guys haven't been through this. Some of you have yet, you know, I mean, you kind of know this, but I'll kind of review them just so that, as much as I hate to talk at you, I want to review them just kind of more quickly. And then I would ask that if you guys can just jump in and like say, hey, I want to talk more about that. That way we can hit on anything where you all feel like you want to learn more, talk more about it. And this goes for the whole presentation class. If there's something you want to know more about, then yeah, you jump in, slow me down, stop me, ask a question. All right, is that a deal? You guys okay with that? Okay. Price, well, obviously sales price, you guys. But I like what it says here. It's a primary factor, but it is not the bottom line. As we talked about, you've heard other instructors as well. Negotiating a successful transaction is not just money. You know, sometimes that is the primary, sometimes it's a secondary, sometimes it's all the way down the list. I mean, I know people that I've been on the listing side where people have sold their house not to the highest couple bidders because, you know, frankly, to them, that wasn't the most important thing. I had one couple sell their house for about 5% less to somebody just because the terms were right and they ended up meeting the family, and because of whatever they just decided that's who's going to get our house. And it wasn't about the money for them at all. But they weren't just bending over and walking away. We still had to negotiate that deal all the way through. There was some stuff that had to get worked out. So terms, and that's what I'm getting at. There are a lot of terms in here. So these are the highlights, right? Closing costs, obviously here, the closing costs, closing date, conveyances, earnest money, repairs. So as a quick review, and if you guys have been through these, how to win the buyer, how to win a deal in this seller's market, you guys, I hope you guys have all talked through these by now, right? If you're going to write an offer that's acceptable and hopefully winnable in this market, you're not just, I mean, you price is part of it, but you're going to have to look at what can you do and negotiate on these other things, right? So closing costs, we'll just touch on that. So I want you to think about one of the ways you can negotiate, in other words, and set is again, we talk about setting expectations. So set expectations about what are closing costs, okay? Who here, like what, I'm trying how to not just ask a leading question that's the obvious answer, but well, let me just say it this way. If the buyer is asking the seller to pay for closing costs, is the seller really paying for closing costs?
No, it's just negotiating the price up or down, leveraging the closing costs.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. Anyone else want to add to that? So Amy's basically right, but I'll phrase it a little differently. If a buyer is asking a seller to pay for closing costs, the buyer is financing their closing costs. That's all that's happening. They are simply financing an additional amount of closing costs into the transaction. That's what's happening. Because really what it is they are offering to pay, if the house is listed at $625 and they, you know, put in an offer for $625 with 25 in closing costs, really they put in an offer for $600 and they're choosing to finance 25 of their closing costs. That's what's happening. And it's important. The reason I mention this and sticking on this for a second is this is if you were to call through the roster right now of realtors, a lot of them would get that wrong. Like yeah, seller's paying them. It's like, no, they're really not. They're yes, on the balance sheet, it looks like that but really what it is the buyer was only going to pay 600 at the end of the day. And they're choosing to add that 25 on to finance it. So the buyer is just financing an additional 25 over and above what they would have paid for the house. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? So, and if you disagree, I mean, with anything, feel free. I'll set you straight. No, I'm just kidding. But for real though, if I just so you guys know, also, I think you guys know me by now, but if I say something that you just don't agree with, feel free to like say, hey, I'm not sure if I agree with that. I am totally good with that. I try to be as open-minded as I can, and I do learn things, and I get things wrong. I'm not right. I'm not always right. So I give you full permission to put your hand up or stop me and say, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. So the reason I say that is, and it mentions it in here, when you're trying to negotiate that kind of thing in there, first of all, a lot of times what we're talking about here is a neutral market where we have more negotiating power on this stuff. But what you always want to do is if you're on the seller side and you get an offer with closing costs, the first thing you should do is, if it's something you're even going to consider, is reach out and if you're not sure it's acceptable to your client, your seller, you want to reach out to the buyer and say, for example, your seller says, well, I'm not paying their closing costs. And so hopefully at this point, you have that conversation with your seller and say, well, you're not paying them. They're offering you 600, they're rolling another 25 in and choosing to finance it. So you could strip out their closing costs, but they've said they only want to pay 600. Well, I'm not gonna, whatever, it doesn't matter. That you negotiate with your seller to help communicate that clearly. And then you go back to the buyer's agent and say, hey, do they need the 25 to close? Do they need those closing costs to close on any house, on this house or anything? Yes, no, well, they're trying to conserve cash so they can remodel, or yes, they have to have that because they're buying a $400,000 house on a 0 down loan, whatever, right? So just find that information out and figure out how to put together a solution, i.e. negotiate a solution that will work for the other party. But just taking that and saying your seller said, I don't want that, and kicking it back and saying, yeah, we're not taking your closing costs credit. Well, then the buyer's like, well, I can't buy the house with a closing cost credit. That does nobody any good. So if you're going to be successful in negotiation, find out the information, like it says, ask questions, listen, and structure a deal that works. Closing date. If anybody's, winning strategies in this market, talk to your buyer ahead of time, prepare them, let them know if they're living in, the in-laws basement and they've got 6 months before they really have to move out. Great. Utilize closing date as a negotiating tool. Say, hey, how about if we pay you less, but we give you, 3 or 6 months rent back, or if your lender will allow, whatever. So utilize closing date as a leverage tool to help with that. Or if your buyer's not in a position to do that, then so be it. But that's another area where you can, on the offer, you have to put a date, but on your email, which is another good negotiating tool, but it's sort of subtle. You create on your summary email that you send the other agent, you put stuff in there and say, hey, closing date, my buyer can close anytime, doesn't matter when, we just had to pick a date based on what you said. You said sellers, a month is good, but my buyer will close anytime. The lender can get it done in 25 days or anytime thereafter. You put that in there. That's a negotiation tactic. You give the other party information that basically says, my client is really flexible. They have the ability to be flexible. If that helps us win the deal, we'll work around that. So conveyances. So that's like personal property or things that convey with the property. Typically what we're talking about, what it talks, is fridge or freestanding stove or washer and dryer, or, you might be talking about a hot tub, but typically though hot tubs are left unless they're otherwise, if they've been installed. If they're sitting on the patio, don't assume that it's included. All that said, in this market, your conversation with your buyer should sound something like, do you want to buy a house or do you want to buy a fridge? So we can structure the offer and add a fridge and not get the house, or we can structure the offer, get the house, and hopefully get the fridge thrown in. Which do you prefer? So in this market, it's a little tougher, but in a general market, you can negotiate appliances. I think a successful negotiation tactic in that regard is, and I play this on both sides, is if the client really doesn't care about the appliances, get to the inspection and the repairs, and then offer appliances as a concession towards, which is down here on the bottom. Offer the appliances or any other things like that. Say, hey, instead of fixing the moss on the roof and putting on new gutters and whatever else, how about we just give you the fridge and washer and dryer? And then the other party says, sounds good, great, done. So that makes sense. Any other questions on that real quick on conveyance? It's things that convey with the property. That's the legal term, something that conveys with the property. Earnest money and option fee. So we don't usually get into option fees. We'll just talk about earnest money. In here in the state, earnest money is what it is. And I'm not going to teach a class on earnest money. It's real simple. It's kind of like you are serious about the house, and I'm putting it's not really a down payment, but it's like a deposit that's refundable under certain circumstances. So here is a way you can use earnest money as a negotiation tool. You can if you put yourself on the buyer side, and it's a market like we have right now, you could say, hey, Mr. Buyer, are you in a position to put down normal, like there's not really a normal amount, but let's say on a $500,000 house, say 8,000, maybe 10,000 might be, the earnest money, if your client has that available. If it's less than that, the listing's kind of like, wow, they're not putting much money in, they're not really that serious, or they don't have it, but either way. But, for example, I'll use an example where I won in a competitive offer situation. I came in and we didn't even have the highest, bid. We did a number of things that all the tactics I've taught on this, which is building rapport, basically being the agent of choice. I was the agent of choice for the other party, and my buyer was the buyer of choice based on everything that I already teed up before we even submitted the offer. And then I reinforced that with our offer communication, and then the things we offered in the offer kind of just reinforced all of that. And we were definitely not the highest bid. We paid way over, but we also my client put down $80,000, which was 10% on that house, $80,000 of earnest money. The other party was like, holy crap, wow, this person's serious. They're not messing around. My client was in a position to do that. So I said, as long as you're serious about buying this house and you aren't playing games, then you're basically planning to close on it regardless, or there's something major wrong with the house and you terminate and leave. I mean, it's really, if that's the two options, then why wouldn't you have a really strong deposit on the house, right? And then, and just as a side note, we also offered a very flexible rent back, and the seller was very worried about being homeless and not finding another home. So the seller took our offer because we basically said, you can stay as long as you bloody want. We really don't care. I mean, we put a 6-month time limit on it. The seller was out in 3 weeks, and she actually, I think in that one, she had paid, we gave her 3 months free and another 3 months. I don't remember what the deal was, but anyway, the seller was out in 3 weeks because as soon as they got their money, she just went and bought another house. I mean, before she even had closed, she had gotten another house. So anyway, the reason that I bring up the earnest money though is that was a big one. The other agent said, my client was so blown away that you guys basically said, these guys are serious. Let's take their offer because everything else is great. The agent's great. Everything's great. Even though they're not as high a price, it's like a sure thing. So they took our offer partially, and in large part, maybe I don't know, because of the earnest money. So repairs. This can go all over the place. This is a huge area for you as an agent to shine. As I mentioned earlier, repairs, how you handle repairs, this is like your whole career right here. I'm teaching you, because every transaction has some aspect of this. Okay, so winning the repairs game starts with you and the conversation with, if you're on the buy side, it starts with you and the conversation with your buyer. You're going to hear me like a broken record. If you don't set expectations with your buyer up front, you are already butting heads with, or in an emotional kind of situation with your buyer. You're essentially, what happens is in that situation, your client's like, you guys are happy, your client's like, oh my gosh, we're so excited, and you go out and you find this great house, and oh, we're so excited, oh, our offer got accepted, yay, let's say it's not quite this market, let's just say it's a kind of a more neutral-ish market, let's just say. And you get this inspection done, and then oh my gosh, it's got this wrong with it and this wrong with it. And your client is sitting there going, oh my gosh, it's got loose doorknobs. Oh no, it's got, oh, what? The window doesn't slide. Oh, and they're getting all in a tizzy about typically mostly just stuff, and then you just it's like the nail in the coffin is, oh, and there's water in the crawl space or something else. They're like, oh, I'm out. I can't do it. Like I'm done. Well, if you had started out with them and said, all right, so part of this whole process is you're going to hire an inspector and you're paying him or her to pick this house apart. And they're going to find all sorts of stuff wrong with this house, because even on a brand new house, they always find a list of stuff wrong with this house. So they're going to find a whole bunch of stuff wrong with the house. That's just how it's going to go. And our goal is to make sure there's no deal breakers. So that inspector is going to hand you this. It's usually like a 50 or 60 page report. At that point, most people are like, what? And they're going to hand you this huge report, and it's going to have all this stuff wrong with it. And then we're really looking for, is the foundation falling down? Is it sliding down a hill? Is the roof caving in? Like, you're just going to say, is it any of these things that we just have to go, I'm out, tap, like, let's go. Or are there things that we can, like, well, if we can find a way to solve that, then we'll move forward. But otherwise we're, whatever. Now you've set that expectation with your client. Well, guess what? When you get that report back and it's only 45 pages, not 60 pages, they're like, hey, it ain't so bad, I mean, sure, like some of the walls are falling down, but really the house is pretty good, because you've already laid the groundwork for that success. So your success in repairs starts with your own client, and same thing on the other side. It's the same conversation, just flipped around, really. So that, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm just helping you guys, Mr. Seller, the other party is going to hire somebody and their whole job is to pick your house apart. And even if you had a brand new house, Mr. Seller, they're going to find stuff wrong with it. That's just what they're paid to do. I mean, they have to justify their job, right? And you're like, yeah, okay. So don't take offense, like, and I always tell them, hey, we have brand new houses that we have inspected and there's stuff wrong with them, and the builders, they already know we're going to find stuff wrong because it's just how it is. It's rare to ever find a house that just does everything wrong. So as nice as your house, they will probably find, I say this, they'll find less wrong with your house because clearly you keep it up really nicely, if that's the case. But they're going to find stuff wrong, and then they're like, okay, fine, and so then when they get hit with this repair, and then I go, oh, then they're going to, the buyer's going to, of course, they're going to want to, negotiate stuff. So they're going to send over like 4 or 5 pages of requests of things to fix. And what we're really going to do is try to find some kind of common ground. There may be the buyer can't finance it without a roof, and maybe the roof's questionable on your house. Or I try to use examples that aren't real to help them kind of like, I mean, I go, oh, clearly you just put a new roof on your house, but like that can happen, that kind of thing on an older house where, the buyer would like to buy it, but the roof really needs to be redone. And so that's what we're looking for, Mr. Seller. We're just looking for how we can find, maybe there's some things you can take care of for them. Maybe they're not very handy and you can fix that dryer vent and everybody's happy. And then, okay, the seller's happy. Okay, great. So now that's how you start out winning with repair negotiations. You've set the tone on both sides of that. Now you can have that conversation about what actually happens in there. And once again, some quick tactics are, if you're on the buy side, you can look at, you try to build rapport, you communicate about what you're looking for. You're working with your client to know, okay, you try to find the differentiator in there. Is there a tipping point for your client as a buyer, let's say, where if like we cannot move forward on this house unless the roof, like I hate to just use easy examples like a roof because that just sucks. That's just easy, but whatever. Anyway, let's just say there's some other, let's say there's some siding issues that need to be refixed or whatever. And it's not maybe siding the whole house, but it's just there's some rot going on and some issues there. And you're just like, your client's like, we just don't have the money. Like we cannot at some point, we can do all this other stuff. My husband's super handy, but we don't have the money to pay somebody to fix that. We don't know how to fix it. Or actually electrician is a big one. Like, oh, the panel, it's some of the older houses that still haven't had the old panel fixed or swapped out. It's like, my husband's handy, but he doesn't know electricity. So we have a baby, we have 2 little kids, and this is an ungrounded outlet house because it's from the 50s. So you're like, it's kind of like a deal breaker for us. If we can't get a new panel, we don't have the extra cash to pay the $2,000 or $2,500 to get that electrical stuff, the panel and a couple other issues fixed. So you know, we really need that done and we're good with everything else or whatever, you know, that kind of idea, you know, but it's got all these other issues. So you turn to you as a buyer's agent, then go to the listing agent, say, hey, my client's got a number of things that they really need fixed. You know, we really, they love the house, but we just like, there's kind of like a threshold. They can't quite, you know, they can't just take it as is. So we put together, I did my best. We put together our best list of things. Do your best with it. Let me know if there's anything, and you know, I've already kind of gone through this with my buyer, but let me know if there's anything, if your seller is just like, I can't do all of this, like just kind of negotiate that out and just like, this is really the list my buyer needs. So let me know what you're thinking, you know, and really you can just be a little more firm if you want, if it's your style, and just say, hey, this is what they got to have. But again, if your client didn't tell you, if we don't get everything on this list, we're walking away, and you present it in that way, like some big ego agents will do, and the other client says, fine, we won't do anything, we terminate. Your buyer's like, oh, wait, what happened? What happened? We just wanted the panel. And you asked for 28 things and you said that anyway. So if you do that, if you set the stage right though, then the other side comes back and listing agent comes back and says, hey, great. Like, well, so this is like, you know, whatever, the listing agent presents it and the client, maybe the client says, no big deal, I'll do all that. Great, done. Or the client comes back and says, man, that's a lot of stuff. And you go, okay, well, what can we cut off here? You know, and if like now you're, you know, you're putting your good negotiator hat on, you go, well, how can I bring this together? Pick up the phone, text, email, hey, buyer agent, is there anything like critical on here? Because my buyer or my seller is basically saying no to all of it, but I'll work on him. I'll try to get some stuff for you, but you got to tell me what your must-haves are, or we might just might be dead in the water. So then Mr. Buyer says, well, my must-haves are the panel and the, you know, whatever, the chairs outside. Okay, fine, I'll talk to my seller. Anyway, so that's that whole kind of interface is how you kind of you bring a deal together to a successful closing. It's really hard to do that when you banter back and forth over text or email, but you can. I know that's the modern thing. But I will say that if it's not a clean, easy kind of back and forth, then tone of voice doesn't carry over text. I don't know if you all have figured that out yet, but if it hasn't ruined one of your relationships yet in your life, it will. Just wait. So use the phone whenever you can. If it comes down to it, hey, I know we're both busy. Do you have time? We can grab a quick call later. Sure, most anybody will do that. And if you're a good negotiator, your goal as a good negotiator is to bring people together. It's not to look good on text or to, you know, save face and only use DM because that's what the other, you know, whatever, you know, Gen Z, whatever person wants to use. Like, oh, screw that. I'm here to negotiate this. So you pick up the damn phone and let's have a conversation for a minute. I don't care how busy you are. So, but when you do that in a nice way, you know, you say, hey, look, I get it, we're both busy. I got a guy right now this morning early. I said, hey, I'm going to be teaching a class and here we are negotiating on a really complex issues on this. It's a bigger property with leases and cell tower leases and all sorts of other crap going on. But I'm like, I am not going to have any hardly time today, but here's the times I have. I will make time to talk to you though. So we like agreed that like, let's get on the phone for like 2 minutes because it's important that we have a discussion and then we can go back to trying to sort out the language of this really complex transaction we're trying to do. So just, yeah, that's that's the dead horse I'm going to continue to beat on until it's, anyway. So communicate well. So that covers all that stuff on page 13. Is that any questions on any of that? Okay. How's everybody doing on anybody need a break? I will need a break some point and grab some water, but I'm good for right now. So holla if you need a break, and I can, if not, it's 2:15. I think we are scheduled till 4. I am happy finishing this sooner if we do, but this in negotiation is really the key to your success in this business. So I will not sell it short for you. I'm here as long as you need me. So, all right, deal? All right. 3 Ps, page 14. Let's do that. Are you guys seeing negotiation 3 Ps on your screen? Just a second here. And I'm going to do this. Any luck? Oh, what happened to my screen? There we go. There we go. Okay, I thought this was more fun. So you don't need to see 3Ps on your screen for the next so many minutes. Ethan's going to read us the 3Ps. We know
I actually don't have a manual.
Oh, no worries. I know that was a little bit of a test. I was curious if you did or not.
Yeah, no, I don't have one yet. Sorry about that. Just been kind of
That
flying
is-
along. and
Honestly,
listening to
that's
my own.
totally fine. If I had it, I would send it to you. Do you have are you on your computer?
Yes, I am on my
You on your
computer.
phone? Shoot Mara a quick email and ask her if she can email it to you real quick. If you don't have it, I don't know who else has it unless somebody here can email it to them. Anyway, I don't have it. I would take a minute to do that. So 3Ps, Jason, how about you? Do you got it?
I do.
Sweet.
So we got prepare, present, and position.
There you go. That's it, right? You guys are experts. Done. Prepare, present, position. Is there anything else to talk about? No, I'm just kidding. So let's talk about prepare. You're going to obviously hear like we're repeating ourselves, but a lot of this, any of these classes, if we're talking about these things, often what we're doing throughout the classes, we're digging deeper on some of these items. So it will sound like what we've already talked about, like what's the goal here? You know, if you're preparing, let me ask you guys a question. Are we able to control how someone responds? Or are we able to control better? Well, are we able to control how someone responds? Let me just ask that to you. Anyone?
No.
No, but you can control how you react to their response.
Ooh, look at you go. Gold star. That's very true. In fact, that's very pertinent to this discussion, isn't it? What you can control, in addition to what she just said, is how you present it, or what you do and what you present, how well you do that script, how well you do that call. You can do your part of that, but ultimately you can't control how the other person is going to respond. You could do everything perfect and they would just respond completely differently because there's something going on, you know? So, but regardless, we still have to prepare. We still have to prepare ourselves and move forward down that path in order to have the best chance of success. So you got to know your goal. If you don't know the goal, what was I talking about just a few minutes ago about talking to your buyer? What was it in a buyer repairs? What was the key thing I mentioned in it? You're representing the buyer. What was the key aspect of your beginning your repair negotiations? There was know what your buyer needs, know what's important to them, know what they absolutely critically have to have, like know the goal that you're working towards, know who your client is. So this is the next point on here, know your client. So you know your client, you know what they need that panel. They got two little kids at home. They can't live in a house with ungrounded outlets without the safety features with a crappy Federal Pacific panel that the breakers won't break even if you drop the toaster in your sink. They just can't. That's not going to work for them, and they don't have the cash after they close to get that fixed. Everything else they can live with, right? So the goal is I want to bring the two parties together. That's the overarching goal. And if we break it down in terms of the specific item you're working on at that moment, to make that whole deal come together, we got to figure out you got to know your goal in negotiating that repair. Because we're talking about negotiating repair, we negotiate the contract, negotiate the repair, negotiate other aspects within the contract to ultimately, works together towards negotiating the contract. Obviously, if you're not thinking, it's not thinking ahead about how this is all going to go, it's hard to negotiate well, right? So when you think about preparing, you probably now think back to a lot of stuff I've told you guys, I've just been talking about when I was talking about like preparing your clients, right? When you're talking about setting expectations, that's prepare is another word, right? You're preparing your client. You're preparing your client for what's ahead. In order for you to prepare them for what's ahead, you have to know what's ahead, right? You have to be thinking about what could happen. You have to kind of know what's going on, right? If you didn't have it in your mind and understand that the whole point of an inspector is to go in there and pick the house apart. If you in your mind actually thought that the house was going to come back with a clean inspection, well, you weren't in a good place about you weren't thinking clearly ahead about the process yourself, right? So what you need to do is you need to be a part of that process and think ahead and help them see the bigger picture and prepare them, right? Anticipate how it could go, right? And also part of that is when you're thinking through what are the different ways this can go and talking to your client about that, right? And so that they're when whatever happens, you know, part of, as we've talked about, working with a buyer in this market is preparing them that, hey, we could put in 3 offers and get 1 accepted. We could put in 30 offers and get 1 accepted. But if you've prepared them mentally and emotionally for the path that lay ahead, you have a far better chance of finding success in that. So that's the part where you're negotiating with your own client, and then you work down the path of a clear outcome. And then, well, set clear expectations. I know I've set expectations a lot here, but apparently it's part of the whole thing. You got to set clear expectations, as we've already talked about. I won't say any more about that because I've already said that. And then, of course, it's hard to do a good job if you're not well informed. So what did I say earlier about reaching out to the other party, whatever side you're on, get as much information as you can. If you are showing a house and you are able to somehow stumble across the seller, don't interrogate them, and but just be in rapport with them. Hey, how's it going? Like, man, your house is so nice. Thanks for having it. I really appreciate you guys accommodating us being here. I recognize this is kind of setting you guys out. It really doesn't matter if it is or isn't. I always acknowledge that. I just, we just appreciate that. I know it's hard getting out of the house with the kids, and we'll try to do our best. Do you want us to let you know when we leave? Well, guess what? They're going to say, yes, here's my number, or yes, let my agent know when you leave, whatever, right? Like, okay, great, I'll do that. It's like, is there any, and then I say, well, is there anything about the house we should know? Or is there any, are there any stairs missing on the stairs? Or I always use some random funny example. If I'm quick-witted and it's appropriate, I'll sometimes do that. And they'll laugh and say, no, well, you should probably know this, or, well, the microwave does blow up now and then, you should know that. They'll usually disclose something, and I'm like, okay, good. But again, I'm building rapport, getting to know them. I'm basically building I'm collecting information for my client's sake, like I'm finding out, like, or I'm seeing, like you're paying attention to how the agent books the appointment, and like, oh, I'm getting the vibe that these guys are getting divorced here. Or you look in the closet and you're like, huh, all I see are her stuff and half the closet's wide open. That's really weird. But his stuff's in the garage, but that's interesting. Like, you be informed, as it says, collect information and understand all the different aspects you can. And, if you're asking, as it says here, ask open-ended questions, right? You're just asking these different questions of the agent, of the people, whatever you can do to try to gather. I went on a deal where we talked to the neighbor. I saw him, and I actually made a point of just saying, I really kind of went out of my way to say, oh, hi, like awkward. Oh, hey, I just have me standing here. How's it going? But it was not, I didn't just have me stand there, but I made it look like I was. And then I got him to get in conversation, and I got all kinds of information out of him. So then I was able to use that to help us on our offer. It was great. You just collect information, right? That's part of your job. If you're going to be a good negotiator, you got to be informed. And it goes without saying, we should be obeying the law. So I hope I don't even have to even say anything more about that. If you guys don't understand the documents, that's what we're here to help with. We want you guys to be well versed in that. But the more you do it, and the more versed you'll get. But don't let that, as Wiz brought up earlier, don't let that be your hang up initially. As Amy brought up, just the first time you do it, after you do it once, it's the second time's easier, third time's even easier. And I'll sit down with you and I'll help walk you through it. Your coach, if it's not here, will do that. So yeah, you be okay with that. Second P, prepare, right? So prepare to negotiate. If you're gonna, as you're preparing, wait, hold on a second. Yeah, prepare. We're still prepare. Oh, this is that thing. So this is an example here. We could read through this. What I would say is, would you guys want to read through this? Because I think I've talked through this, essentially what this is offering to you guys, right? Right. So like, if you think about this scenario, Clients running your customer property. Yeah, I mean, so based on the things I've shared with you guys, what are some things let's throw out a couple, so Ethan, the scenario is that it's a single buyer, client representing, or client is, she's in a rental, she's a first-time home buyer. There's an asking price on a kind of a neutral market. Looks like the roof might have leaked at some point. It's priced where it should be given that. Your client's in a position where she would of course like her payment to be as low as possible because she's trying to pay off debt. So it's been a lot of activity on the listing. Ethan, what would be some questions that you would want to ask your client before writing an offer for that? Kind of think about that a little. I'll let everybody else go.
Well, it was tough. I mean, they're in debt, and they want to have a low, not coming in too strong, lowest offer they can get, and the roof is on top that has leaking.
We'll assume a little bit more neutral market, not like today's market, just for.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe if we could do a contingency on the roof of some type, that would work.
Yeah. Anybody want to throw in some more? I mean, there's no one right answer to this, just by the way, but just let's think of some things you would want to do to understand, to talk to your client, to get ready to be able to represent your client as best as you can. What are the things you want to ask your client?
I'd be curious as why she's renting her present property.
Always a good one. Yeah, never hurts to ask that question for sure. But let's assume, so we don't necessarily have that, but it'd be good to know, hey, what's your current living situation? And that speaks to, let's just touch on that for a second. That actually is good in a lot of ways, but it speaks to their motivation, right? It'll help you understand why they're moving, really, probably, right? That's one thing.
Yeah, I'd be curious, is like, does she not get along with her neighbors, or what's going on there? Is she,
Yeah, great. Actually, that's really good. Think about that. Just for fun, we'll rabbit trail on that. So if you ask all those questions and you're getting information, now you look at it and you say, well, shoot, this new house has got some of the same problems. It's by the same it's on a different railroad track, but it's also going to have that same loud backyard that you currently have that you don't like, right? You as an agent might be like, hey, this isn't a good fit for you because you told me you didn't like this loud backyard that you have. Well, let's cut this one back to the freeway. I mean, it's not going to work for you, right?
Yeah, or the neighbors barking dogs or something. She might,
Yeah,
might
exactly.
need to find a little 5-acre parcel out in the country or something. So
yeah, whatever, right? So by asking questions, you're getting that information. What other questions would you guys ask in relationship to, let's say she likes the house. Let's say in this case, it looks like it's a good fit based on what you know, but it just has this potential roof leak issue. And from that standpoint, it's about all you have to go on. Otherwise, it looks like a good fit for her. What else are you going to ask her about before trying to prepare to write the offer on this deal?
Well, if there's been quite a bit of activity on the listing, I would help her look into what the difference in her payment would be from 155 to 175, to see, what's her comfort level with her payment and where that needs to be, and if that's going to be affecting the price, so that she could potentially win out on that.
Great. Yeah,
Offer.
that's a great.
I think we
yeah.
need to find out how much the roof is cost. Wasn't it about like 15 to 20,000?
Yep, right. You're absolutely right. How much is it what's the roof gonna cost? What's the client's exposure on that, right? Because that's kind of a.
Couldn't you
Sorry.
also wait till you did an inspection till it's required?
You could. So let me ask you this. If you go down that road and your client who's tight on money just paid for an inspection and all this stuff, and it's discovered that, the seller is absolutely not going to do the roof at that price and the buyer can't go any higher, where are you? Have you really served your client well? Right.
That's true.
and I totally misread that. She's a first-time buyer. I thought she, as coming from as a homeowner, I thought the client was renting out her present property for some reason and was looking to buy another one. So I totally misread that.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Well, either way, though, you could go either way with it, but either way, right? It's like she's trying to keep her payments low. And,
Yeah,
you know, if we read the rest of it. So if I'm, when I hear the scenario, things that come to my mind as an experienced agent is that with paying off her student loans and other things, I mean, we didn't get into this, but if I had heard just this little bit of information over a beer at the bar or something, that I was met her and I was having a buyer consult later, I would be like thinking, okay, well, she's probably tight on cash if she's still paying down some debts, not necessarily, but maybe. So I'd want to explore that a little bit more. Like, hey, how much down do you have? Do you have your own down? Are you getting a gift from parents? Whatever. Have you gotten pre-approved for how much, you know, is it a 0 down, 3% down? I mean, so I'm trying to determine what kind of financial position that they're in, right? You'd want to, some other things you could throw out there are, like, well, kind of going back to the idea that asking about their current place, if we kind of take that and run with it a little bit, what you kind of want to like be asking your client is like, so what is it you really like about this new place, for example? What is it you really like about this place? What are some of your favorite things about it? What is it about that makes this a really good fit? That's part of your client, your buyer representation journey that you do. So that's not just unique to this house that you're looking at writing an offer on. If you're a good buyer's agents, when they're representing buyers, so good buyer's agents will ask those questions as they go through showing houses. Hey, how does this one compare to the last one we were just at? If you had to pick one today, which one would you choose? Like, that was the only 2 houses in the world, which one are you going with and why? And you do that, you know, okay, based on, you get to the end of the day, you have 3 showings, or you just have 1 showing. Hey, how does this compare to the one we looked at on Friday? If you had to buy 1 house out of the 2, which one would you buy? And then at the end of so then you go back to the scenario, you've shown 4 houses today. At the end of your day, you show the last house and they say, so, okay, you've seen 3 other houses and you've seen this one. How does this compare? So far, you know, and they say, well, I still like that first one the best. So it's like, okay, so out of the 4, it sounds like you still, the first one, if that's all you had to, you ruled out the other 2 because you said the first one was better than that. So now we're back to, and you're just helping them understand their choice. So let's say you ask that's a question. What about this is your favorite? You ask questions about their finances. Like I said, I would say, what would be like, if you got the house and we got you a good deal on it, would you be in a financial position to be able to pay for the roof repair? You know, do you have a credit card that won't put you out? I know you're trying to pay off student loans, and is your debt to income really tight? Or do you have some cash set aside that you were hoping to do remodeling with, you know, whatever of those could we do? And then this is something where if you're a good negotiating agent, a good buyer's agent, your client's like, oh, I don't know, I've got like 50 grand down and blah, 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 and they're kind of not sure. You go, hang on, let me call your lender. So you call the lender or email, whatever. But ideally, I mean, I'm a quick, get it done quick kind of guy. So I call the lender and say, hey, you text them, call me right away. When you have a minute, I want to discuss this. And I say, hey, okay, so that sounds like they've got 60 to put down for the closing costs, down payment, whatever. What if we were to adjust that and do 30 down or 20, whatever it is, and then use this to make some repairs after closing? Oh yeah, I could give them basically the same rate. It's not going to affect them. Their payment might go up, $50 a month, but then they'd have the cash to do the roof, and I can get them a better price on the house, right? You see what I'm saying? See how like you as a buyer's agent, by collecting those data points and asking those questions, you're able to negotiate on your client's behalf, right? Does that kind of help make sense if you're in this scenario, what you might do with it? And of course, I don't want to undersell the importance of setting expectations. So you're gonna have that client conversation where you're gonna be like, how are you gonna feel if the seller comes back and says, I want full price, I'm not giving you the roof? Are you in a financial position to even do that? Do you still want the house if we have to pay full price and there's no repairs, which is kind of our current market? That's the discussion that any of us are having with our clients in today's market. Given the situation, are you okay buying the house as is, whereas what you see, or is it only going to work for you if they fix this and that? You know what I'm saying? So that's probably the most pertinent sort of question you're going to ask, not only in a scenario like this one or in a neutral market, but in today's market for sure. What are the deal killers? What are the, yeah. So the next one is touching on the same, something that I've already touched on, which is how you present things, right? So what's a winning tactic that I've already talked about that relates to presenting? A winning kind of tip, let's say, or tactic, whatever. What's one thing I've talked about for a long time, actually, not just today, but other times, that you can utilize to help you win in this? Anyone? The word starts with an R.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. My son was in
Oh,
here
No worries.
running his mouth.
Everybody else needs to answer. You already know this one, I'm sure. Just kidding. The word starts with an R. What I've used it a number of times, and I've talked about it in almost every class I've taught, and anybody that's coached with me has probably heard me use the word. Rapport. Build rapport. If you want to be in rapport with your client, in rapport with the other agent, if you're gonna, one of the keys to presenting an offer or anything you're presenting to the other party, the more out of rapport you are, the harder that is. Essentially, you've created a wall between you and the other party when there's no rapport. And it's the more in rapport you are, the more that wall comes down. The more you can have a discussion, a negotiation. You know, when a husband and wife are divorcing or having issues, the wall is totally up, and they're lobbing stuff over the wall. They're not even talking. They're not have no rapport going on, right? And it's painful to watch a painful divorce because they're not even like on the same page at all. They're just mad and they're just acting whatever their deal is. Because there's no rapport. The rapport is gone. In fact, it's not even just gone. It's actually like worse. You know, it's like the it's anti-rapport, right? Because they're both so mad and bitter or whatever their deal or one party is. You don't want to be in that situation. Let's go back to the beginning, the fundamentals. You are a guide walking a willing buyer and a willing seller down the road. We're all just holding hands, walking down the road, bringing it together. That's all we're trying to do. And we're gonna experience some bumps in the road. One side's gonna have a pothole that the other side didn't have. Both of us have to climb over this big speed bump, whatever. In order to get to the end, that's what we're gonna have to do. And so our job to negotiate is, if we're gonna be able to present our clients' information, if we're gonna be able to, represent for our client, we have to be in rapport. We just or do what you can to be in rapport, So page 17, it says, oh, that's funny. Call the other agent. That's the first thing. Huh, it's funny. I feel like I've almost said that before. If I wasn't listening to myself, I probably have. So there you go. It's that important. It's the first one on this list. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. Would you all agree that that speaking is not one of the highest forms of communicating, right? So there's other, like the nonverbal communication has been lost wearing masks. We all know that, right? But there's so much that goes on as human beings. There's so much more communication that happens that's nonverbal. You all agree with that, right? You guys have been around in life long enough that you know that to be true. So pay attention to those. When you're talking, obviously, the tone, as I already said, tone of voice doesn't carry over text. It's really hard. So do your best to not use convenience tools that will strip your communication effectiveness, right? Texting and that stuff is really great. 5 p.m. on Thursday, yes, whatever. Great, perfect tool for that. But going back and forth on stuff, not a good tool, really not. Pay attention or keep quiet once you present an offer. So as it says here, sometimes one of the best ways to win is just to present something and then just be quiet. And honestly, it's hard, right? Even as a teacher, right? One of the best ways for me to get you guys involved or anybody is just to ask a question and then just stand here until somebody finally responds. And that's uncomfortable, but it's the same thing in negotiating. Who here, what's the saying? Do you guys know the saying I'm about to say? He who speaks first loses. That's the negotiating kind of like phrase. First person to talk loses. So you lob the issue out there and then you sort of wait for the other party, because at that point you're just trying to vet out whatever's going to happen next. And if you keep talking, you're negotiating against yourself at that point. Does that make sense? And then, of course, like we talked about in the beginning, stay calm and relaxed. Don't get so tied up over what you want to happen that you get all emotionally fired up and flustered and get your panties in a wad. And like, you're like, okay, you know, now your emotions are disrupting the process. Your emotions are taking you out of rapport with the other parties, you know, everything, right? So that's the thing. Be, you know, emotions, it says, this thing even says, keep emotions out of it. Emotions are real. I'm not going to sit here and say they're not. Do your best to retrain your emotions and guide other people's emotions, right? One of the ways to, little random tip on rapport. If you're in a contentious or frustrating situation with somebody, one thing you can do when you're in that sort of contentious situation is to, one thing you can do is to, sorry, I got derailed by Amy Kmekin, is to come alongside, to acknowledge the tension or the situation. Like you come alongside them, you almost might say, like, hey, I understand, like, you know what, I totally understand where you're coming from. Like, yeah, I can see how I would feel that way. Or you have empathy for, essentially what you're doing is you're showing them you are empathetic to their situation. Like you understand, or you're hearing them. So they feel heard, they feel acknowledged, their frustration feels acknowledged. You can de-escalate that way. You can sit and, like, you know, de-escalation is a really great negotiation tactic. You de-escalate the emotion. This is what they try to teach police and other people how to do, right? They try to, it's a highly charged situation, telling them to not feel that way and say, you're wrong and feeling that way. Why are you so upset? Why? That's not helping. That doesn't help the situation. But what does help is if you, and this is the intention of this class, is to go down that rabbit trail, even though it's a really good one. But the point of that is just know that if you can de-escalate the emotion of a situation, now you have the chance to really guide the things where you need them to go. Does that make sense? You guys kind of, there's a class called Language of Sales. Some people don't like it because the name is called Language of Sales, but truly it's the language of, it's the understanding of how to guide conversation. It's learning how to talk and speak. The one guy, I remember one of the first times I took it years ago, the guy, he's like, okay, we put their hand up. I solemnly swear that I will not use these, whatever tactics, whatever we were learning, these newfound skills for harm and, you know, ill will or whatever, basically. Because he's saying, like, what I'm about to teach you, you could take and walk into a bar or walk in anywhere and get people to do what you want them to do. And he's like, when you learn how to master this stuff and master how to use this neuro-linguistic programming and some of that, he's like, you can basically walk, you can sell a tire to a camel at that point. You can not just sell, but walk, you can convince a camel that it needs a tire. It's more what it is. And it is basically, it is founded on being in rapport, connecting with people, connecting with and de-escalating emotion. So the last one here, give your offer the best chance. Well, we've already talked about that, ways to do that. On page 18, it talks about these nonverbal cues. Does anybody want to go through nonverbal cues, or do we all agree that do you guys have any question about nonverbal cues at all? I think we're all adults. And if we don't know, you know, if we don't know nonverbal cues at this point, then, you know, take a class on it. Let's talk about some, actually, I forgot about this page. On page 19, tactics and counter tactics. Yeah, let's look at this here. Tactic, nibbling. So I think most of you have this other than Ethan, right? So there's Ethan, the three tactics are nibbling that they list on the page. Nibbling, hot potato, and then good guy, bad guy. So for the first tactic, nibbling, what's represented here is the action is once your client has agreed upon a major concession, the other party will start nibbling for smaller concessions. So it's the idea is, and this is a negotiating tactic. So if I'm going to flip it, I'm going to use the counter. I guess first of all, let's say the counter tactic to that is you kind of want to find a way to shut that kind of nibbling down, basically to kind of, they feel like they're getting some momentum effectively in the negotiation. And this is, again, if you're on the other side, it's a good tactic because you feel like once you have them on their heels, you just kind of keep slowly pushing them a little bit and pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, and they'll just keep falling backwards. It's that momentum, something's in motion. You know, you always know that physics, something that's in motion tends to stay in motion. It's actually true of people emotionally and other ways. Once you can harm that, but if you can kind of keep just nudging people along, and it's the same thing. If you want somebody to walk down a path towards something, if you get them nudging along and start walking them, it's magic. They just start going that direction. So what you can do though, if you're caught up in that and you feel like you're just getting, one of the best things I've found is to just find a respectful way to cut off communication, at least for a little bit, and give yourself time to kind of recover. So if you feel like you're in this thing, just like, oh, I gotta go, something just happened or whatever, find a way to quickly cut it off. Let me get back to you, and give yourself space to collect what's going on. If you feel like the other agent's just kind of just taking a little bit more and a little bit more, and somehow you found yourself, you know, or you're talking to your husband or whatever, or wife, and you're like, man, she's just like chopping away at me here. Like, just take a minute or go to the bathroom or whatever you need to do to get off the phone with the agent or the email, whatever it is, and collect yourself or get somebody else to look at it. If you're in our case, you know, if you're coaching, just say, hey, can you review this with me? Because I feel like this feels like they keep asking one more thing and one more thing and one more thing. And we can develop a response to kind of help slowly kind of bring that to a halt. The hot potato idea is that, you know, it's basically, it says here, the other party tries to say like, oh, here, my client can't afford them, your client needs to pay them. Well, okay, that's not the best example, because while that is true and while that does happen, the reality is you should be, if you did your job or tried to do as well as you can in your job at vetting that information earlier in the transaction, ideally that's not the hot potato you're kicking around. There might be other things, and you know, sometimes that's the way it is. And truly there's a point where you have to call their bluff, right? And so if you know your client, right, you've agreed that your client has a threshold that they're like, hey, this is just where it's at. And you know, they basically give you permission to take the deal right up to the edge. That can be that's one way to deal with a hot potato, is you say, fine, then we won't do anything. And then the other party says, oh, well, but your client I would say this, whatever you do, don't do that unilaterally yourself. Do that with the full buy-in of your client and with their permission. So like I've had a few recently where I'm talking to my client, said, so let me just make sure I'm clear about this. If we push back on that and they say no and it kills the deal, you are okay with that? Yes, I'm okay with that. Okay, so we're totally clear on that. You know, Amy, we talked about that with you buying that house. If you get to that point and they say no, you're okay walking away at that point, right? Yeah, we are at that point, we're okay. And so then it's okay to represent that position, because you know, at that point, I'm willing to take the stop or take the wine in the road at that point. You can't, just make sure that you are not representing your own interest, that you are representing your client's interest, because if I will tell you, it will come back and bite you, and potentially bite you legally, if you push a deal that kills a deal because you were trying to win and it wasn't, you know, got caught up into the hot potato thing or any one of these reasons, and you're trying to be the hero, and you're trying to, remember, you're not the hero. So whenever agents try to be heroes is when they screw things up. And when you're not the hero and you're the guide, now you can be a guide who walks ahead. You can be the leader. You can say like, hey, I'm gonna figure out how to get down this jagged trail, and then I'm gonna show you the path, and we're gonna do it. But you're not meant to be the hero in this story. So yeah, anyway, that's all I'll say about all that stuff. Any questions on those? All right. So positioning, we've really talked about positioning all along here. Would you all agree? We've kind of setting all the stuff we've talked about, the stuff I've been talking about. I hope you've heard it's positioning yourself is layered into all this stuff, right? So rapport. the first thing on this page says acknowledge and affirm common ground. Well, that's how you build rapport, right? You acknowledge where you guys are coming from. You try to figure out where you're at, where you know, acknowledge that common ground, and then ask a lot of questions. So positioning, I know I guess I kind of not harp on, but I talk about rapport often, but I think when you understand the social dynamics of human beings and what makes us able to do what we do as professionals, utilizing those, I'll just call them tools in your tool belt, that rapport that covers a lot of aspects of that. So the key thing is, if you are asking these questions, if you're understanding where do you guys connect, where you have common ground, like, oh, I totally get it, you know, my client's hard to communicate with too, blah, 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 I don't know, whatever your, you know, conversation is around that, you build, if you build a rapport, essentially, if you're in rapport, which means you've asked questions, you've connected on common ground, which is the first one here with the other agent. If you do all those things well, then your ability to negotiate is, you have such a better place in negotiating. It's like amazing. Like, I got a review from another agent in my other office, a high-end luxury agent that's kind of been around a while, but she was saying to Colleen, the principal broker, she's like, that's like, he's an amazing guy. I did best transaction with him. Well, I'll tell you honestly, it was really hard working with her, but I was super intentional about how I built rapport and worked so that, because she has a high ego. So it was bringing us in alignment towards the common, and she had frustrating clients and I had a hard client. And so we had to figure out how to be in common ground so that we could guide both of our clients to an ending that initially wasn't the same ending. And that was one of our biggest challenges. We weren't coming to a common place on this. So I can't overstate the importance of, had I not done that with her, I would have never, if I had not acknowledged that common ground and gotten us into rapport, figured out how to basically work together with her, we never would have gone as far as we did. It just wouldn't have happened. We'd have crashed and burned that thing numerous times throughout the transaction. It couldn't have come together based on the facts on the pages, so to speak. So anyway, I don't want to overdo it yet. I want to re-emphasize the importance of that. If we were in person, I would love to do this role-playing thing, because I just think it's really, but I really think you guys get the point of that, right? What time is it here? It's going on 3. I think we're looking good here for getting through this. Oh, hang on a second here. I'm going to do something. Wish there was a smaller one. Okay. I'll play with it a little bit more. So
That's way more colorful.
isn't it? I know, I thought that was way better. I think, Amy, your background is just busy enough that the computer isn't cutting it out. But not that it needs to, but I just think it's cute. So this page 21 here, positioning. We could go into, you know, how do we position this? You know, it's like, and obviously one of the ways we can do it is to partner up, but I think this is a good one I'll just talk through it real quick and see what you guys think on this. So, well, you have the thing here, scenario property.
So you can use it.
No, because he lost it, but he didn't work it out.
You can hear or see the stuff here. Property has 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 350, well-established neighborhood. It needs new carpeting on the first floor, new garage door opener, random, I don't know. So what? 3 offers have come in, but they were all below asking price. So if you're on the buyer agent side, buyers come in and say, hey, we're going to offer yet another lower than listing offer in a kind of a neutral market. Buyers been pre-approved, so buyers like to close in the shortest time possible. Okay, so they need a good closing time frame. They need the appliances, or they would like the appliances, since they're going to be arriving from out of state without appliances. So that'll make sense, right? Listing agent, turns out the house that you've listed, this is their family home. They've grown up here. They love the area, but now their children have grown up and they really just, they're downsizing out or whatever it looks like here. They're moving away and they've downsized out. So they would love to help out their friends and family by giving some appliances, their new washer and dryer that they just bought. They can't really take with them. It doesn't make sense, but they, whatever. It's like their daughter needs it. They will not be moving until they've sold their current house. So they're motivated to leave town, but they can't leave until they sell. They believe, because they've raised their family there, they believe that their house is worth what they're asking and probably more. But the market has, what we learned from the scenario is that the market, if 3 offers have been made, but all were below asking price, what does that tell you about the market value of the home?
It's lower than the asking price.
Bingo. So if you're this isn't in here necessarily, but it is pertinent. If you're the listing agent and that's the scenario you're in, what conversation might you be having with your client about this time? I mean, given what we know, what just for fun, what conversation should you be having with your client?
To negotiate about the price and or the appliances
Yep.
as a possibility.
Yeah, what would be the kind of the vibe of your conversation with, you're the listing agent, what would be the vibe of your conversation with your own clients based on what we learned in the scenario at least? And what the basic things are.
I would tell them that the market value is less than what they're asking for in today's market. They might not get what they're asking for. The buyers are looking to have the appliances. Maybe we can either, give them one or the other, a lower price, or leave the appliances.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we go back to their goal too of, are they needing to downsize and make that move to Florida, or maybe they're not ready to make that move. The market is telling us that they're probably not going to get their 350. So what is their ultimate goal?
Yeah. Yeah. So all good stuff. Exactly. What is one way we can communicate to, what's probably the most effective way we can communicate about the market to our seller? Should we be, well, I'll just tell you. If we just tell them, hey, your house isn't worth 350, how are they going to feel about that?
Probably a little bit insulted.
Right.
But if we show them the market data, the numbers, and provide actual numbers for them, then they might be a little bit more receptive to that.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. I task you with carrying that through your career. Be that way, because that's the truth. The reality is how we communicate the truth, that what we all have talked about is true. And yet, if we communicate it in the wrong way, then they take it wrong, right? They blame us. They say, oh, well, how dare you tell us our house is not worth 350? It's like, I'm not telling you that, but the market is. I think your house is worth 400, but nobody's willing to buy it for that. So that's the first thing that before any of this is setting expectations, getting our client in alignment with reality, right? Asking them questions. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, so let's review. We've had 3 offers and they were all below whatever they were, right? So, and I would just say to them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what does that tell you about the market conditions right now? I'd just ask them. That's the best thing to do, is ask them. If they're still not getting it, but our house is so much better, just we are waiting for the right person to come along and see it. And you can go, that may be the case. That totally may be the case, right? What what the best tactics, now, if you get into a tougher negotiating, if this is you negotiating with your own client, the best way to negotiate with your own client around this stuff is to use, use commoditization of something as your kind of, or the commoditization of some sort of product as your to make your point. Even though, I'm just kind of saying this, even though houses can be more unique, and the more unique the house, the more, now this is a hard, if you're like selling you're selling that dome house over up off of, what is it, off of Weir Road or whatever it is. That's a tough sell, you know, right? Because, I mean, let's just be honest, that's unique. So how do you place a value on that? They could say, well, we're just waiting for the right buyer. And it's like, yep, you're right. But you said you wanted to move to Florida. Now we're back to what Amy said. What's your motivation? You know, yes, you could wait here. We could you know what? You're right. We could leave this on the market for like 2 or 3 years, and probably somebody will come along who's always wanted a dome house, and they're going to pay you whatever you want for it. That could happen. But you've told me it's more important for you to get to Florida sometime in the next 6 to 8 months. So, you know, that kind of, does that make sense? You guys kind of tracking with what I'm saying there? You reconnect, the less that they are able to or willing to hear that their house is kind of comparable to other houses, and the market is doing that, the more that you could just have to use a little more extreme example and reconnect them to their motivation. Now, if you have how people who are just not motivated and really don't want to sell, and they're just testing the market, that's a whole other conversation. That's not this class. So, so yeah, I mean, really, for the sake of our class and negotiating, you can see where, first of all, you should be negotiating with your own client to help that scenario have the best possibility of an outcome that works, right? And then past that, yeah, you're just going to be asking, I mean, you're going to be going back and forth, you know, I mean, ideally, either party is just asking what's going on and asking questions and trying to understand the other party and trying to determine, based on what I'm seeing in this scenario, it sounds like they've already rejected 3 other offers. So that's all I can, you know, I don't know. It didn't give us enough information, because if they're in a multiple offer situation, but all are under list, well, I would have said, I mean, I don't know, you know, it's kind of a weird situation. So I would be coming in there saying, well, I mean, it hasn't sold yet, so we wouldn't necessarily know if there's 3 other offers, but as a buyer's agent, you wouldn't necessarily have that information. So anyway, can you kind of see though how you could handle that situation by gathering information and trying to basically help put everything together and position it to see if you can come to a good scenario in the end. Any questions on that? Do you guys have any, want to walk through any more on that? Okay. And I'm not like, just jump in if you guys, you know. I think this counter offer one's interesting too. So buyer agent scenario, page 22. Your client found the house they love, and it's in the neighborhood they want. It's at the top of their price range, surprise, surprise, and does need some work updating the kitchen and master bathroom. So basically, this is the normal scenario for most buyers. Let's just be honest, especially here in this market. Your client makes an offer on the property, and the seller's agent says, I must warn you, I've got many offers, and your offer is pretty low. Okay, so kind of, this is still even kind of in line with our current scenario. Like, we don't know if that's true or not, but that's what you were told as a buyer's agent. On the listing agent side, it says your sellers are motivated. That's what that first sentence says. You feel you have priced the house competitively based on the information your clients gave you that, hey, they're moving, they're getting transferred, and you know, they said, hey, we need to get, everybody says we need, oh, I gotta get the most money out of this. You know, will you take a lower commission? I have to get the most money. I'm like, I'm going to get you the most money out of this, but what I get paid to do my job is kind of irrelevant, you know? Anyway, you feel that you have priced the house competitively. Okay, good. You are aware the house needs some updating. Sellers thought it was fine, but you know, it was fine for them. There's been multiple offers. Doesn't sound like, so you're on the listing side right now. This is agent, the stuff you know as a listing agent. You've gotten some offers in. None of them seem to line up quite right with the seller. And then this latest offer is even lower. So you respectfully, as a professional, you say, hey, I've gotten other offers. This one's, I mean, I would honestly say, this is something I'm just gonna give you a tip. In this market, if you have a house and you've listed and you have this scenario come up and this exact scenario, you should say to the agent, say, hey, I gotta tell you, I've got, this, yours is like the lowest offer I have on the table. And there's no other really terms of this offer. Like, so I don't, and I always say this, I want to be respectful to you and your time, Amy. I don't want to have you spin your wheels. So I just wanted to tell you that up front. You know, if your buyer wants to update their offer, modify it, whatever, feel free. You know, you've got till tomorrow at 6 p.m. But I just, I didn't want you to, I know the time it takes to write an offer and everything. I say all that. And Amy feels, thank you, I get it. My buyers suck. They just wanted to write a low offer. Don't worry about it. Just reject it and we'll be fine. Or whatever, right? So, so what do you guys think? I mean, like, like, if you're the buyer's agent, let's assume that the clients really do love the house, and let's assume let's just have you guys play the buyer agent role, given the market we're in. I'm going to play the listing agent, and I just said that to you guys. You as the buyer agent. I just said, yeah, hey, I want to be respectful. You spinning your wheels, this is the lowest offer I've gotten out of the other offers I have on the table. I talked to my client, you have until, let's just say the timing's not an issue, but whatever. You have until 8 tonight, and that's no problem for you and your clients, but let's just assume that for your sake on this scenario. So if you guys can get us something better before 8 o'clock, go for it. So how are you going to respond to that? What's your response? How would you either talk to me? How would you talk to your clients? What would you do to try to set up something for success? How would you respond to that? Anyone want to feel good about it? You can just role play it, or.
Well, could you ask the listing agent what is their highest offer? Would that be possible?
Yeah. So just so role play with me. It's like, so I just said all that to you, right? I said, so Ethan, right? Is that who was talking?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. So I just said, yeah, Ethan, I want to be respectful of your time. That offer you put in it's the lowest offer I've got. So I don't want you to spin your wheels. I just wanted you to know if you can get us something better by like 8, then you've got some time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What is your highest offer on the table right now?
Yeah, good question. My client hasn't authorized me to disclose that, but I can tell you that yours is the lowest I've gotten so far.
Okay, yeah. Then I'll definitely go back to my buyers. They really did love the property. So I'll double check with them and see if we can, raise the offer price. Somewhere we can get a deal in.
Okay, cool. Get back to me. Let me know.
Sweet.
Anybody else want to have a different want to take that a little different angle, different tact, anything, just for fun? Or would you guys all kind of on the same track with Ethan?
Yeah, there's not a lot of things you can tell the listing agent, right? Unless you just have to go back to your client and ask them like how bad they really want this.
You do, yeah. So, for example, let's say, Amy, so you be the listing agent. So you just said that to me, basically say the same thing back or whatever version of that. I just submitted this offer. I called you up. Hey, did you get my offer?
Are you talking to me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Amy, go for it. You're the listing agent now on the same scenario.
Okay. So yes, I got your offer, and it is the lowest offer that we've received.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, cool. I was like, well, is it like, am I like way, way off? Or like, are we like way out of the ballpark off? Or is it even remotely close to what you got on the table?
I can't disclose that information. Do you want me to stick with that, or?
You can,
okay?
or whatever. I would say most of the time people don't, but I would say, okay, hey, Amy, I totally get that. But just so that I'm not spinning my wheels here, like what, are we like totally off? Cause I don't want to waste your time, Amy. If we can't even play ball, then I'll just, whatever, you can just reject our offer and we'll just, I don't want to waste your time. So what, are we even anywhere close to the ballpark, or are we just totally off? And then, so I guess you can answer me and say You're the lowest offer I have, but you're kind of close, you know?
Okay.
So give me
All
that.
right. So
kind of
you're
number.
okay. So
That would
you're
be-
close. Yeah.
That could be, okay, cool. Well, okay, Amy, let me see what I can do. With these guys, I know they're kind of close to the top of their price range, but, you know, let me talk to them. Let me call their lender and see what, if they've got any kind of wiggle room. Maybe we can adjust their numbers somehow. You know, I don't know if we're close, I might be able to get there. What was the deadline? Is tonight at 8? Is that what you said?
Yes.
And are you sitting down with your clients right at that point, or are you just stopping taking offers? What's the situation there?
We're stopping taking offers, but they are looking for 45-day close. So
Okay.
that's something that's important to your buyers.
Yeah. Is
to be
there
looking
like,
for them, yeah.
does your client need any, let's just assume I haven't gotten this information. Is there like anything else like that would be helpful to your clients? Like, do they need a rent back? Or are they gonna like, is there some other like, is there anything we could, you know, offer them that would be helpful to them? Or you just say rent back, like some rent
yeah.
back, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
well, yeah.
they'd like a quick close.
Quick close. Would sooner be helpful, or is that actually more stressful for them?
Sooner would be helpful.
Okay, you know, cool. That's good to know, Amy. Let me talk to the lender and see what I can do. See if they could do it even sooner. If that would be helpful, at least we could probably help you out in that regard. Help your clients out a little bit. Is that helpful to you if we can make that,
Yeah.
that closing
Mhm.
happen? Okay, cool.
I think if you could close that gap and come in with a quicker close, you could get in there with our offers.
Okay, awesome. Well, let me get working on that. Like I said, I think we were close, but I know my clients, you know, I think they have a little bit of wiggle room. I know they were just trying to budget around it. You know, it's like they can afford more, but you know, like most people, they don't want to be house poor, right? So they're trying to be prudent in their financial decisions. So let me see what I can do. And I'll talk to their lender, make sure that we can, if it's, you know, and I'll give you our best shot. Is that okay with you?
A little pen.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'll let you. So do you guys see what I was doing there though? Do you guys pick up, like, rather than just, you kind of see pick up what I was laying down, all that? I was, you know, asking her questions. I was trying to get more out of her, getting her to talk, you know, but that's a pretty normal thing. You get them talking. Once in a while, you get that agent who's just like, I don't care, just give me the offer, or you can't get them on the phone or whatever. Just they email you, just give me your highest and best. That's all they'll give you. And yes, that is the case sometimes. But I would say that, like we talked about in all these other pages, utilize all your different, reach in your tool belt and pull out all the different tools you have. Not all of them are going to be available to you at that time, but the reality is a lot of times they are, you know. A lot of times when an agent does say, oh, I can't disclose that information, the majority of the time they won't stonewall you like that. They may say that, I say that, but even if the person's nice and gets me talking, I'll give them something. And especially the more rapport I'm in with that agent, the more I'm going to be like, I like this agent. I like I like how they're asking questions. I like how they're trying to make it work. You know, they're starting to rise to the top out of all the agents I have, they're starting to rise to the top of the agents that would be good to work with on this. So don't underestimate winning in negotiations. I'll tell you right now, one of your best tactics is, like I said, rapport, being in rapport. And the reason is that being an agent that another agent wants to work with is going to always give your client a leg up. It is always going to. Now, will it always be enough to win? No, but it will give you a leg up. There's been other classes. If you're in masterminds with top agents, they will say that. It's just a reality, you know, it just is. So when was that? We were on a mastermind with, or something. There was something I was on recently with, I don't know if any of you were on it, but there was one of our top agents in our office, and gosh, what was that one? But anyway, I think I brought that up, and I think, what was that? I don't know if you guys remember. Do you guys remember? I think it was one of our agents. Anyway, we asked that very thing: how to win in today's market. I think that was the mastermind, or Jake was teaching it or talking about it or something. But anyway, the point is, yeah, I mean, she even said, yeah, I mean, all else equal, if I know it's a good agent that's good to work with and easy to work with, they're going to be the one that we choose. I mean, that's just how it is, you know, so. Anyway, is that helpful, you guys? You see how that interaction between, like, given the situation, given how you know, you're trying to, in this market, that scenario that we just role played is exactly what you're facing in this current market right now. You're going to put an offer in, you may or may not get an answer, but if you've done the legwork up front, you have at least have a better chance. You increase your chances to the extent you're able to, you know, not always going to, like I said, you're not always going to get in communication, but if you can, I've done this with people before, and I even had one where we got so close. We didn't end up getting it, and I'm wishing we did, because even the other agent was like, I would have so much rather worked with you guys. That they ended up choosing the other people. They were like 3,000. He goes, they were like 3,000 higher, and they were such a pain in the ass to work with. You know, it's like the whole thing. It's like, in the end, I think my clients would have netted more working with you guys. I think our transaction with you would have just been so much smoother and better. But that's what my clients went with, you know, because they thought the few $1,000s difference was going to make the difference. And I was like, I mean, what can you do? And he's like, he goes, actually, the agent was like, at that point, I wanted to counter back yours for the difference, because I knew, having talked with you, I knew that at least it'd be worth the counter, but my clients were like kind of over it at that point. They just wanted to accept the other offer. And that was so close. They just wanted to accept it and move on and not counter yours. And I was like, you know, well, it's a bummer, you know, what can you do? But we went from being completely in last place with buyers. My buyers have very little to work with. I was like, we are not in a strong buyer position with them. And I got them to where we were essentially in vying for first place. And yeah, you know, whatever. And you can't win all those. That's the outcome. You can't control the outcome. So, but I did get us the best at bat on that one, and I felt good about it. So yeah, putting it all together, let's say, yeah, we're pretty much towards the end here. Any questions that you guys have? You want to role play anything else? I think we would be helpful before I go into some of our kind of review stuff, but any questions or any other role plays you guys want to role play in negotiation or talking through stuff that you might encounter in this market?
I do have a question about how much do you like to share about your buyer with the listing agent? Just because an interesting scenario that came up when I was making the offer for our house was the listing agent really liked that we were a family that was going to live in the property because it was acreage. And then the other offer was an investor that was potentially going to break it up. So how much conversation do you have about your buyer specifically, like who they are?
Great. That's a really good question. So on the outset, I would say you want to first make sure your client is in agreement with you on what you do or don't share about them, I guess you could say. So if your client is particularly private, then you just, you know, I mean, you can just share the basic, like, hey, it's a male or it's a guy, whatever, I don't know, you know. I had one recently where, well, it's one of my contracts that's in contract right now. It's a guy he's a trust fund kid. And, you know, I'm not supposed to disclose really much else about that situation, but that's the reality of it. And that affects our purchasing and where the money's coming from. So that I could disclose at least that, because that's pertinent to the transaction and us, you know, and in this case, I used it as a benefit. I was like, it's a trust fund kid who has the money. He can buy this place. And we're just gonna, but it's got to work for what he wants. And if it's not what he wants or has too much wrong with it, then he won't, you know, it won't work for him. So I was able to negotiate a better price because we were able to just say, look, he wants it, but this is what he's willing to pay for it. And if not, he'll go buy something else. And the parties were like, fine. So anyway, so yeah, first thing, make sure everybody's okay with what you're sharing. From there, you guys have all heard about the whole, like, I think they were termed love letters. I didn't like that term because I didn't feel it was accurate. I was never writing or having my clients write a love letter. I was having my clients write an introduction letter. And I think, I shouldn't say I think, I know from experience, and I know from just factually and being involved in situations, the majority of the time, people appreciate knowing something, and it is helpful. Now, not all the time. Some people don't want to know. They're like, don't tell me. But the truth is, as you all know, when I get a contract that comes over and it says, you know, Bjorga, then they're like, oh, that's a Scandinavian name or whatever. People make, you know, some people just do. They make assumptions about what they see. You know, there's certain names or certain whatever that people are going to see, and they're going to assume, oh, that's a female, that's a male, that's, you know, a person that could be from this background, right? So people make those assumptions whether we want them to or not. And I believe if we can frame that in a positive light, you know, factually, then if it's not beneficial to the situation, we keep that at a minimum. But if it's, you know, if we can just somehow personalize it, it usually is beneficial. So yeah, because that's a long answer that with a lot of sort of, yeah, anyway, nuance in there. But I guess the answer maybe even more clearly is I feel it out with the other party. So if I'm representing buyers, I like what I talked about in this role play, right? The truth is, my clients may, I'm basically not necessarily disclosing, because really, if I have a client that I try to find a way to frame that. If I've talked to my client and they've said, yeah, this is really all we want to pay, but I know they have like 500,000 in the bank and they don't really care. I mean, they care, but they're like, you know, whatever. But this is what's important to them price wise. I can still use essentially the same kind of structured dialogue with the listing agent on that, because I'm still doing my best. So this is kind of the max my clients, you know, felt was what they could make work. Well, they couldn't make work twice as much, but they choose to only make work this much on this house. So it's not, I'm not lying about it. I'm just trying to represent their interests, and I'm trying to position ourselves as buyers in such a way that I'm, you know, that I'm basically able to not give away their where they're coming from, like, unless it's beneficial. So in the case of, like, sometimes I'm like, my clients, you know, they got all this money in the bank, but they're choosing to finance it. If they had to go cash, they could. But the most they're willing to pay is this, you know. So I leave it at like, hey, this is the most they're willing to come in at. They could pay twice as much if they wanted to, but they don't. This is all they want to pay. And so then I'm like subtly telling the listing agent, I've got really solid buyers that are going to close this deal. So you either pick us or you pick some other person that you don't know if they're going to close it. That's like what I'm actually trying to communicate, you know. So you have to think about what you're saying and why it's beneficial to the transaction. I guess that's, maybe I'll come around to that as a thing. You know, there's times when it makes sense to share. In your case, with your guys' situation, it did make sense to share that because, yeah, that's beneficial to the other party. But, you know, and sometimes it's a gamble. Sometimes that information, you don't know if it's gonna be beneficial or not. So, you know, you might say, hey, my clients love their pet and that backyard's great, and the current client doesn't have pets. It's like, oh, that pet's gonna run my house. Well, you never know, you know, so you have to kind of just be mindful. But think of how you be in rapport. If you go over to a house, somebody has dogs, well, and your client has dogs, there's a opportunity for rapport. Maybe you can get in rapport, because, like, you could say, oh my gosh, oh, this is just like our dog, whatever, so and so, and then you see they react positively. So you kind of milk that, you know, you kind of work that rapport. But I mean, whatever. Oh yeah, this looks like it has a nice backyard. Is it fenced for pets? Like, I don't know. We don't have pets. We've never had a pet in this house in our life. We'd like to walk around barefoot and we hate pet hair. And like, let's not talk about pets anymore, you know? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. What else? What else you got? I'm here to provide wisdom.
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
In this state market, is it true that, I don't know if it's legal or not, that you can submit 2 offers at the different houses at the same time?
So the answer is, can your buyer purchase both of those homes?
No, they're just offering it.
Right.
Because
So
I heard like people talk about it right now, because you know how they have like multiple offers. So they just kind of like submit the offers into multiple houses.
So what happens when both of those offers email you at the same time saying, we've accepted your offer? Now what do you do?
Can you back up on one of it?
Your client has agreed to buy 2 houses and they don't have the financial means to buy 2 houses, right? I mean, right?
Yeah, right.
So
They
then what?
only want one
If you're,
house.
if you're acting honestly and ethically as an agent, how do
Mhm.
you reconcile that? You yourself know they can't afford both houses. And now you're under contract on 2 houses. So you're sitting there as an ethical professional with the full knowledge of the fact that they cannot close on both of those houses, that they're stringing one or the other party along, right? And if that ever came back, you better be sure that you're gonna get in trouble for that, for sure. Your client, whoever, is gonna lose their earnest money if the other people figure that out, and you terminate and they find out, oh, you had an offer in on my brother's house too, at the same time as mine, and you represented in this offer that you could close on it, we're taking you to court, for misrepresentation, I mean, and they would lose, your client would lose, because they clearly did misrepresent their ability to purchase. It says right in the contract that you have the ability to purchase that home. So that's a challenge, because yeah, one of the strategies is that you just throw a bunch of offers out there and hope they stick. And are there agents doing it? Yes, there are. So I'm not gonna say you should do it, because you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do people do it and just hope they don't get caught? Yeah, probably. Is it the right thing to do ethically? I don't believe so. I mean, it isn't, but I don't believe it's a good thing to do. That's the challenge. You're trying to negotiate. Your client may think of it as a tactic for winning in this market, but the truth is, like, at any given time, you throw 3 or 4 offers out there on these different houses. Well, you could actually get one of those, right? So it's a really sticky, challenging problem. Even if you're like, well, these are all like lowball offers, and we're just going to take, if any of them, go, then we'll go with that route. Or I get it. I've been in that conversation with my client before, so I know where that conversation goes, and it's hard, but I don't know. You could play the game a little differently and do short. You can just, kind of strong arm the listing agents, although that's not really always the best tactic, but you could try it. It does work sometimes. Where you just say, hey, here's our offer, it expires in 2 hours, take it or leave it. We're going to write an offer on another house if you don't accept this one, or don't counter us within that time frame. I mean, and they might say, too bad, so sad, we're not going to play ball. And then you just, I don't know. You have to reconcile that with your client. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions about this thing? Think through the stuff as you're going through your day. I would, if you can, I should say, self-reflection or there's another word that had came to mind, not reflection, but being aware of oneself, being aware of what you do in your day is an important aspect of growth, right? So if you want to grow and be better at something, or be aware of something, just know what you kind of keep track of what you do in a day. Keep track of, I mean, we all know this from like, building better habits around eating, obviously, keep track of what you snack on, but it's the same thing around how you interact. So if you're like, hey, gosh, I really want to do better about having a positive attitude, and you start tracking yourself your day, and you're like, man, I got a really piss poor attitude when I'm in this area or this thing, or I keep making these negative comments. You start tracking that, now you become self-aware, and you can flip that around. Negotiating is no different. If you figure out that you never ask questions, and you always just try to ram whatever you're trying to do down everybody's throat, I mean, not even in a bad way, but just in a, whatever kind of way, maybe you become more self-aware, and you're like, hey, what can I do to be a better negotiator? Maybe I can practice on my kids, maybe I can practice on my coworkers, maybe I can practice the different ways that I can negotiate, and have a better outcome, right? I mean, so, just think about ways. That's just it's an opportunity I'm just going to throw out there, is think about the ways that you interact with people, and think, okay, could I practice being a better negotiator based, if I did this a little differently next time, or maybe in the ways I interact ask questions, seek to figure out the, prepare myself for what it is I'm trying to work towards, and then kind of be in a rapport with the person, and, just think through those things. And you'll find that it's a, you don't have to think of negotiating as some hard line tactic that I'm going to go in and negotiate, as I said at the very beginning, which in this thing pointed out somewhere in the literature, you are negotiating all the time. We are always negotiating in everything in our daily life all the time. It just doesn't, we don't realize it, so. So let's just take a minute here and review. So you guys are on a track here. We are, what is this, February? We're like 2/3 of the way, maybe, through this educational kind of track. Our goal at this coaching program is, that we want to help you guys be amazing and awesome agents. Is that going to happen overnight? No. Is it going to happen with one class? No. Is it going to happen because you took this whole series? Maybe, but the reality is, and we just talked about our team meeting today, like as Gary Carroll talks about, mastery does not come from taking a class once. So for you, now the stuff I'm talking about, maybe you take this class 3 times, and maybe it's 3 different instructors and you pick up different stuff at different times. Maybe you're able to just stick it on in the background and listen to the recording a 2nd time or 3rd time and see if you pick up on stuff. Maybe you go out and you're doing things and you're negotiating offers, and you come back and listen to this negotiation class and you're like, oh, that's right, we talked about that. Okay, I got to do that. I want to try that. Stuff. That's how life is. When you're prepared. What's the saying? I was going to say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The idea of that is when you are in a place where there's a lot of things kind of embedded in that, but one is that when you're in a place where you go out and try to negotiate a few deals, now all of a sudden you become the student, because you're like, I'm working on these deals, and then you listen to that instruction again and you're like, oh, now it makes sense. Now you connect the dots, and that's just, you take a contracts class before you've written an offer and you're like, and then the glaze kind of comes over and you're like, oh, okay, and then you go try to write an offer and you're like, oh, what was that again? What did they say about that? Or how does that condo townhouse, it didn't work again? And then you write that out and you do all that, and then you come back. Now you take that class again and you're like, yeah, that's what she said. Oh, okay, I remember that. Okay, I forgot about that. I'm supposed to check that box, and that's why I came back, right? So all that stuff starts making sense, right? But it's because it's the repetition of it. So yes, it seems boring to take it over and over again, but I'm an advocate for, you can be super engaged the first time, you can listen to it the next few times, but just look at certain classes like these. I bet you guys all money that if you went back and started working on your business and jumped into the commands and how to lead generate classes, you're going to be like, oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's how you do that. Oh, that's where that's found. You're going to all that stuff's going to be, it's only going to happen because you took the class, you engaged in the stuff, and then you back and took the class again, and now all that stuff starts making sense. I need to go back and take those classes personally, and I've been doing this a long time because I still pick stuff up. So I go to farming classes depending on who's teaching it, because sometimes I learn stuff from that I'm still adding to my bank of knowledge. Page 24. So you guys know this. Your daily 10-4. I know you guys have stuff you're doing. Some of you are more available than others. The truth is, and if you're listening to this later as a recording, you are not going to succeed as a realtor if you are not focused on your lead generation in some way, in some fashion. The business does not come itself. You're going to get, as we talked at the very beginning, you're going to get some gimmies from some family and some friends or whatever, I hope. And yet to build momentum over time, it's not going to come because you just got a business card and stuck it on the front door of your office and sat there and waited. That's just isn't how it works. So, building ads, putting yourself out there in appropriate ways on any social media, if you're into that, and if you're not, then you have to at least show up as essentially a virtual business card, and then build in other areas. Those things are all considered lead generation activities. So when we talk about your daily 10-4, write notes on homes you previewed. You guys should all be out there previewing homes, unless you've been in 50 something homes. Every one of you should be looking for opportunities. All my agents that I'm coaching, whenever we're talking, I talk about that. Well, I shouldn't say whenever, I should be harping on the few in here that I talked to, but I have talked about that with everybody at one point. Get out there, find homes that you can go preview that are vacant. So you're not putting the seller out, is why I say that. And just so you can get exposure, and you can take your camera and go, oh man, check out this tub, like, oh, this thing's amazing, and get some, whatever, practice making videos, even if you don't post them. Do some pretend lives with your camera just so you can get comfortable with it. Look at the view, find homes that have a cool view and that are vacant that you can preview for a client or potential client. I don't know, whatever. Get out there and look at homes. Get out there and look at homes in areas that you definitely are interested in or serve, or look at home types. If you have an interest in certain types of homes, make sure you are getting out there and seeing it. That's important. Yes.
I feel like an idiot, but when you say get out there and look at homes, are you literally like saying go inside and tour the homes, or are you just, like what's on the market and stuff?
Yeah, get out there, look through. So if you're my coaching clients, my agents, what I would say is we would be talking about like pick an area. If you're interested in or farming in a certain area, whatever that is. But even if you're not farming, if you're just interested in an area, get to know the homes in Beaverton, get to know the homes in Southeast Portland, I don't know, wherever you are, get to know some of those homes. If you take a certain interest in homes of a certain type, if you really like the condos in South Waterfront, well, go find some that are vacant, and then just, look at the listings and say, hey, this one's, inventory is tight, but there are some out there still, go when stuff pops up middle of the weeks, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, as soon as it hits the market, schedule a showing. And if it's, especially if it's not occupied, just because I don't like putting people out, but if it is, you can always, and it's something you're really interested in, reach out to the agent and say, hey, I may have an interested party, but they're not, like, I just don't know. I want to preview it, but I don't want to inconvenience the seller. So this is you building rapport and building a good reputation for yourself. And then just, put it out there. And then they say, oh, the seller's gone all day anyway. You can go look at it anytime, before 5. Oh, great. Okay, I'll do that, And then go out there and look at it and be like, okay, I've done this. I've gotten in. I've popped a lockbox at least 40 times. I can walk up and do it in the middle of a conversation and put my code in and not even miss a beat. I can, be solving a math problem in my head, and it's like all second nature now. If you don't go and do it, it will not be like that for you. It just isn't. You get all nervous. Your client's standing there, they're looking at you, and you're like, oh, I put in the wrong code again, and I don't. Hang on, I just got to figure this out. I'm telling you, that's how it is. I have agents call me. I'm at the house. I can't get this thing to work. I'm like, take a deep breath. Like, okay, it's all good. If you previewed 25 homes like I asked you, you'd be like, yeah. So like, you'd be just punching it in and not even looking at your phone. So, right. So go do that. Understand homes. Now, when you walk through a home with a client, it's not the first time you've walked through somebody else's home. The second or the third time you've done it now. Go to any open houses you can. Just go through, tell them you're an agent. Please tell them you're an agent. It's respectful to them, so they don't think they're excited to think you're a client. People walk through your open house, just say, oh, hey, how's it going? And say, like, how'd you find it? Or are you an agent? Or are you, oh yeah, I'm an agent, just out driving around. Great. Well, take a look around, like build rapport with them. Let me know if you have any questions. Do you have a client looking? No, that's cool. Like, hey, check it out. It's an awesome house. Find a buyer, So there you go. Get out, see some homes.
I did that a couple of times, and then and I asked the agent if I can post it on my social media. Some of them say no, some of them say yes. But yeah, I know. I just got okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Some of them say no. Yeah.
You can always post.
You can always post the outside, right? Can you do that?
You could post the outside, yes.
Right. Okay. Because I usually I just do that on my stories, like just post it outside. Because usually, because they say no. It's like, okay.
Yeah, these are, some basic social media tips, obviously, but if you're into or on social media at all, then go do stuff. Hey, these are my favorite 3 doors I saw today, whatever, front doors or whatever, my favorite, whatever, I don't know. Or just some, pick stuff, like most bizarre toilet I saw this week touring homes, or pick stuff that gives you a good excuse to post it, right? And then you're not having to get permission to post a whole listing of another person's listing, right? Does that make sense? You just, you guys track what I'm saying on that? Yeah. What you're doing, again, is you're just helping the people around you, your friends and people you don't know, to connect with you and feel like, hey, I like this Ethan guy. He seems like a cool guy. he seems like he picks up on he's the lighter side of real estate, plus he also knows his numbers, like whatever, you're kind of building that rapport along with being a normal human being on social media. That's sort of the game, right? And so people start framing you as a realtor that's out there without being the annoying realtor that only talks about homes and has zero life outside of that. You don't want to be that guy or that woman either. So, but anyway, that's only one reason to go out and tour homes. If you're not into social media, it's okay. You still need to exist, right? You can't not have a website. You got to have a website because people ever Google you or your name, you need to show up on LinkedIn and Facebook and all these things, but just have it exist for the sake of a virtual business card, and then do other things if that's not who you are, so anyway, but that's, you got to be doing those things. And then, script practice with get on the script practice we do here at this office in the morning. You guys anybody can join in on that. And then otherwise, just role play like we did with the listing and a buyer agent. Just, do that with each other or me if you need to. Just, like, hey, I'm going on an appointment. Can we role play a couple of scenarios? Sure. I'm happy to do that. If I'm your coach for sure. If I'm not your coach, I know your coach would do it, because that's one of the things that we like to do for helping out. Any other questions on that? I think on this prepare for next class, you're, preparing for contracts to close, follow up, grow your database. Yeah, all those are all the things that hopefully you guys are doing all the time, because between every Ignite class or whatever, these are just the building blocks of the success of your business, right? So I know sometimes it seems like stupid homework, but if you don't do the homework, you're not learning the stuff, you're not, or your success in this business is a result of a lot of little choices that you've made over time. It's not a result of one choice. Like, it's a result of it's like a whole bunch of a cumulative effect of a ton of choices you made. So you made the choice to do this and do that and do a note card and C3 homes and whatever, and you add all those up. Now you add all those up over 3 months, you are a hopping agent. You did like 3 of those one time during 3 months, you're almost no different than you were when you started. I mean, that's just the reality. And neither am I. Same thing. I'm not any different than that. So anything else?
When we're out there talking with potential sellers, can we offer to do a comparative market analysis for them without getting an agreement going? Just
Sure.
say we don't have to do that for you. Yeah.
It's a great tactic. Yeah.
Okay.
You can just say, hey, I mean, depending on you could, as a newer agent, if you have people you kind of know, you could use it as a fishing expedition. So you could say, I could say, hey, Kendall, like, especially if you got like any whim or hint that might be an option, that, right? You could just be like, hey, like, I'm trying to perfect my craft here, because if they know you're new, like, just leverage that, you could just be like, hey, do you mind if I do like a market analysis on your home? I just want to practice that. I'm working with my coach on that. I want to help, I want to do this really well. My coach is helping me, like, he's been in the business 20 years. And so can we, like, I want to put this together and, like, and just practice. And most people are like, yeah, go for it. They're not going to care. And then now you get the scripting down, and you can practice on somebody who didn't put their hand up to begin with and say they want to sell. And you can see if you can walk them through that. It's like, okay, so do you like your house? Is this your forever house? Like, oh, it's not your forever house. Like, where would you, if you could move anywhere in the world, where would you go? If you move anywhere in town, where would you go? You have those sort of conversations. And then next thing you know, your buddy is like, yeah, now that you mentioned it, oh, he's had one. And like, oh, interesting. My house, I could potentially net that. Okay, that's interesting. Now you have a listing. Next thing you know, right? So yeah, go for it. Absolutely. And please do, in fact, do market analysis on LCs on homes of people just for fun, so that you can practice. Because I'll tell you, it's a lot less pressure when you do it for somebody that you're just practicing on than it is when it's game time and you're like, I don't want to screw this up,
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was given a buyer, a friend of mine knew somebody that was looking to buy a house, and I've been reaching out like once a week or whatever. Do you have any suggestions? Because she's not really replying to me, but she's not telling me to go away. And I don't want to keep pushing, but my boss, who's a real estate agent, she said that I should keep trying until she tells me to stop.
Yeah, that's correct. The thing is that we have to remember a couple things. One is that as realtors, our head is in this all the time.
Right.
As strange as this may seem to us, there are a lot of people out there that don't think about real estate all the time.
Right.
So
They have lives too.
they are doing what they're doing, and they're like this gal that I randomly met, it doesn't really matter. She kept poking her hand up, like out of nowhere. It would seem like I would like try to connect with her or whatever, and then she just is just dark, and then all of a sudden she's like a month later, hey, oh my gosh, I just saw this house. Like, can you look into that? Like as if she wants to buy it right now today, like, you know, but it's like, I got talking to her. I started kind of just digging in with her a little bit. And I kind of started building some rapport and figured out she's so busy. She's just running a million directions. She's trying to do this stuff. She has it out there as a goal that she really wants a bigger house, needs another bedroom for her girls, you know, really needs a 3-car garage, not a 2-car. So she has these things she really wants to move towards, but she's just super busy all the time. And it truly, if she can find the right house type of thing, it's like, you know, it would work for her. Now, is that a motivated buyer? Yes and no. But what I did realize is that she definitely is capable of buying right away and would like to move right away and is just not thinking about it all the time. So I actually moved her up into trying to motivate her, like, I'm going to go look for a house. We're going to try to find something, but you have to be ready to go. So let's get your lender going. I basically moved her into a position of being ready to go by, hey, who's your lender? Oh, you don't have one? Okay. You know, kind of a deal. So with that one, you could just be like, yeah, just if you have any information, work with it. Do you have do you have a lender on that one?
No, she's my good friend. It's her friend. And she originally gave me like, she's pre-approved for this amount, and she was looking a while ago, but had to step back because of COVID and work, and she's ready to go. And I talked to her twice, and first time she wanted to talk to me the next day because she was driving, and then the next day wasn't a good time. She'd call me back. She just never follows up with me. And so I've reached out through text, like, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee and see what, you know, talk about what you're looking for. And I just sent her another text message today. It's been about a week. I don't want to do it like a lot. So I was just doing it like once a week or whatever. And I just sent her a message, just wondering if you're still interested in buying. You know, give me a call and I can set you up on a campaign that's going to feed you, you know, listings that come on the market that coincide with what you might be looking for. Give me a call.
Yeah, that's not bad. What I've heard techniques that can work potentially even better. I mean, that those kind of a string of different, you know, questions like that are always good. The best thing to do is to ask questions though. So like what you did is to say, hey, you know, are you still interested? Or what I really try to put out there is this idea that, hey, you know, if you say like to her, you could maybe just, if you, I guess I don't know all the information you have. If I've gotten enough out of them where I know that at least they're looking for a 3-bedroom or something in Southeast, or I try to get to a point where I got at least enough information that I can tease them. So I'll say, oh man, I just was looking, I saw a house pop up, or I just talked to an agent, and sometimes hopefully this is true, but I'll be honest, I've stretched the truth a little bit in this area. But I've just said, hey, I just talked to an agent and I heard about a 3-bedroom might be coming up in Beaverton. Are you still looking? Are you still interested? And if they are looking, they'll usually pop their head up, say, yes, what do you got? Like, right. Or whatever, just say, are you still interested in that? You know, you have to kind of tickle them and tease them a little bit with something, you know?
Yeah. I don't know any of her wants or needs or anything. I just know that she was pre-approved and but I'll just keep trying once a week.
Go with more general. Yeah, just go with oh my gosh, it's like, hey, I was just talking to an agent in our office about, do you have like, is she looking, like, do you have even a part of town, a city? Do you have anything to go on?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're in Southern Oregon, so
Right.
It's like Medford area.
Okay. So you could go like, hey, I just saw, like, if you really don't know, you could guess and say, hey, I just saw something over down on this part of this corner of town or whatever, pick it up, or even just say you saw a listing, but just say, you could kind of go like, I don't recall, you could pretend like they might have told you. I don't recall, were you looking, did you want to be further north, or is that area of town suitable? Sort of kind of that kind of a thing. You can either use a if then type of comparison to get them to commit to one or the other. That's one kind of tactic, is like, say,
Okay.
would you prefer to be more south, or is north better for you? Is that closer to work? Get them to pick one. Then they go out, and if they're listening at all to your conversation, your dialogues, and they're just not responding, they'll go, south is better. People will usually engage with that kind of, thing. Do you want to be closer to the highway? Whatever, use some differentiators that are maybe, if you have to go high level, use differentiators that people like. So in Portland, are you looking to be on the west side or the east side? Right? That's an easy conversation. People go, oh, I'm a west side person, right? Or, hey, are you worried about your commute time? I was just talking to an agent, but there's this awesome house, but it's kind of further out. And then they're going to go, no, I got to be closer to town. Or, yeah, I'm actually looking for a house further out, right? So you baited them with something that could be of interest, right?
Okay.
And you just to get them to engage. And then, yeah, I would, instead of like saying, like, I wouldn't kind of harp on that. You threw the coffee thing out. I would leave that one alone and not offer that again. But just
Right.
tickler every so often, once a week, just throw out what they call just bait. That's what people say. Just bait them with something. And
Okay.
that person may be totally busy. That person may have COVID right now and may be sick and not thinking about anything. That person may have just had a breakup and their mind is not on houses right now, or whatever. Don't take it personally. Just kind of, is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Just keep trying, basically doing what I'm doing till I can get more information, I guess.
Yeah, just throw out, but what you'd want to try to do is what I was suggesting is find ways to get them to give you some information. So bait them with things that might be of interest. I saw something come up for 500. I don't know if that's out of your price range, right? And then they'll go, no, I can't spend that much, or whatever, right? I saw a really cool house, but it's only 1 bedroom. Like, use your bracket. What you're trying to do is build a box. So think of bracketing. It's only 1 bedroom. I don't know. Is that too small for you? Well, the people will engage. They'll go, oh, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom. Boom. Now you got.
I'm just trying to get her to respond to me, period, right now. So.
Well, so bait her with those things and
Okay.
give her like, oh my gosh, I saw that I just drove by this house. They were just putting the sign in. I don't even know if it's in the listing yet, but it's over on the north side. Are you even looking in that area? She's going to say, if she doesn't respond at all, she's not motivated, right? So
Right. That's kind of what I'm getting at right now, is it doesn't feel like she's motivated.
You just gave her a hot option. So either she's not motivated or has no interest in the north side, or whatever it is you said, right?
Right.
Because it's in that school district. Oh, so right. So now you just try to gather those bits of information and then just leave it,
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, totally. That's a good thing for all of us, though, because that's a scenario we're all going to be running into. So that's a helpful exercise. Thanks for asking that. Yeah. What you got, Amy? What's new and exciting? Anybody? Wiz, what do you got for me? Anything? Any questions? Anything you're working on that we can all learn from?
I have one, but it's a weird one.
Hey, I'll take weird. I got it.
I have a friend that got her heart set on a property that went into probate the day that I called about it.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, the owner passed. And so it has expired. The listing has expired.
Okay.
So I have built a really good rapport with the listing agents, but it's expired now. And they did say that they are going to relist it once it falls out of probate.
Right.
But my friend and client, she wants to know if there'd be a way that we could do an off-market offer and find the next of kin and have built some rapport with them. I have not been able to get that information, and I don't know about the ethical or how I feel about asking the listing agents for that information. That doesn't feel right to me. So I'm not sure where to take her as far as what she wants to get to.
I think your situation isn't quite as unique if we kind of look at more of the general kind of issues that you're facing here. So one is you're looking at an expired listing. A couple of, tactically a couple good ways to so if we're coming from the position of I have a buyer, this isn't like you're looking for a listing. This is I have a buyer and I'm trying to find a home for them. So what are your options? Your options are go door to door in neighborhoods. Your options are look for expired listings. Your options are, right, drive through neighborhoods looking for moving vans, knock on the door and say, hey, are you guys moving? I have a client that wants to live here. So, right. So these are all like your tactics for trying to find off-market opportunities, right? So you're in that scenario where you have a house that was listed and it's now off the market, but you've connected with the listing agent. Well, if the listing agent says they're going to relist it, then that person is your advocate right now, hopefully. Or, I mean, they could be, unless they're just stonewalling you, and then maybe you need to go around them. But if you have a good rapport with them, then utilize that rapport. Utilize that to help get your offer accepted. There's no real benefit in trying to go around them, because if they've already acknowledged that they're going to relist it, they may or may not be, I mean, let's just, for the benefit of the conversation, let's say scenario A is it's a secure relist for them. They're for sure probably relisting it, right? They're just waiting for it to go through the process. Scenario B is they're just hopeful that they're going to be the one that's going to relist it, but that's not a foregone conclusion, So probates are there's some public record component of that. So you can try to do your homework, figure out to go to the county, figure that out, see if there's some way you can send mail to the house and a letter. Your client could send a letter to the house as a person. Hey, my condolences. I heard, that I was interested in this home, and before this happened, I'm still interested. If I can, I would like to purchase the home at some point. I don't know, find out, they can, you guys can craft it together, but it could come from your client as a direct reach out. Anyway, that's kind of like scenario B. But if you're in scenario A where you have rapport with the agent, I would play that out all the way. I've done that with bank-owned houses, and I've gotten my clients great bank-owned houses because I heard it went back to the bank. I reached out, I found the bank-owned agent that took it on. They haven't been released to put it on the market yet, but they're like, basically the minute it hits the market, I've already written an offer on it, that kind of thing, right? So in this scenario, you want to figure out how to do that. Just say, hey, my clients would really like to do it. Can we write an offer? Now it's a matter of who can accept it, because there's got to be a party that has been assigned, the executor or whatever. You just got to do some homework on and ask some questions to the extent the listing agent will share that, on whether, if it had already expired, then there's probably, I would be asking a lot of questions around, like, why it didn't sell in this market. Was it way overpriced, or was it a seller scenario that just was, they couldn't accept an offer because they were on deathbed, whatever. I mean, there was something going on, and it was just a scenario that didn't allow for, they weren't in a good position to accept an offer. I don't know, I don't know exactly what was going on there. So do what you can to empathetically come alongside of them and offer a solution by way of your client being ready to go with an offer. That's what I would advise in this scenario.
Okay.
And basically you could even write it up and say, subject to seller being, the executor being assigned, or I don't know, but they can't, there has to be somebody that's responsible in order for the property to be released, It depends on what it's being, is it being released to the heirs, or is it literally like, are there no heirs and it's actually like stuck in probate until, I mean, there's a bunch of questions basically you got to solve.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but if the listing agent's there and you got that option A kind of going on, then just keep working that the best you can, and that's your best option. Because if it's not saleable because they can't, then your best option is being in good graces and have that offer sitting in their hands, waiting for the second that they're released to relist it again, or I mean, that's the best you can do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else, you guys?
I think that's it.
How did this
We're
format
good.
work for you guys? Was it all right?
What?
How was this class format?
It's cute. It's fun. I thought a little different than what we're used to.
Yeah, mix it up a little. How about,
Shake
was
things
this
up a bit.
teaching from this position? Is that okay for you guys? Was I too small? Can you not hear me? You hear me okay?
I thought it was fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it was
I
good.
realized there wasn't too much I could do with the whiteboard, but it would have been nice to draw
Oh, well, now you know for the future.
But I just thought for fun, I would try it out here and see if it works good, let's, make it more fun. It's
Yeah.
nicer for me standing here talking to you in a classroom environment than it is sitting at a desk,
Absolutely.
And of course, what is this thing called? This is, what do they call this thing? Immersive view. That's kind of fun. Why not, right?
Why not?
Why not? Cool. All right, you guys. Well, yeah, make it a good day. I was trying to, and we'll, hopefully I was just thinking, did I take roll for, I don't know if I actually did, but that's okay. I think it was, Jason was the only other one that was on here, right? Oh, I think,
Thornton was on here for a little bit.
yeah, he seems to be popping in and out occasionally. Cool. All right. Good to talk to
Well,
you guys.
thank you, Eric.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Just
guys.
tomorrow.